Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me as he does every week is Duncan Torrance Shields. And of course, we've got Sam Davis pressing the buttons. I want to say right at the top of the show, because I have to hear the intro now because of the way we've got the setup, because we're dialing in Skype to talk to Duncan. It's a shame, isn't it, that Anders made that piece of commentary so good. One of the best pieces of CSGO commentary of all time. Because we can never really remove it, but it's so out of date now.
Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Freiburg,
everything about it.
Yeah, I watched a clip of him today. Actually, fail to shoot an opponent who didn't see him in the back. I think it's on the front page of Reddit. It's absolutely hideous, and I love Adam. But yeah, the days of that seem to be long gone. Anyway, Duncan, how are you today?
Yeah, not bad. Just slow day, just chilling out, you know. Did an article, did a little video today about just one of my pet peeves, you know, that I've thought about a lot, which is that whole thing of when people try to blame the fact that male pro players in games win more prize money on some sort of weird gender bias. So it's actually not even on the base a controversial topic. It's usually just people who are either misinformed or like willfully misinforming the public. So I just did a video on that. I thought it was a good one to set straight, because my idea was I found the worst ever example of an article. So I thought this way everyone could just link to my video in the future and we don't have to have the same debate 700 times with people who don't really want to listen, you know.
Yeah, it was a bit fucking strange, actually. Cause I don't know why that article surfaced. I'd missed it the first time. It was actually from January, wasn't it?
I saw it was on Reddit somewhere as well. So I think that's maybe where the person got it. And then yeah, that's the bizarre thing. It wasn't even like it came out a week ago. And I hadn't even seen it originally. Yeah,
it was really bizarre, and it was like I say, it was 6 months, 8 months old now. And, it just came up. But, I mean, the numbers in that are absolutely fucking absurd. I mean, like, I made this point on... It's not even like it's something that's incredibly hard to debunk. It's just like the maths are wrong, and it makes no sense whatsoever. It's sort of like taking all sports, for starters, you know, and saying, oh, well, Lionel Messi gets paid this much and has won this much of prize money, and this female darts player over here... you know, hasn't made as much. And it's like, well, obviously, because one is the, most watched sport in the fucking world and the other is fucking darts.
That was probably the silliest, part of the whole skeleton of this piece, was that one of the central examples given again and again was because they had Scarlett as the number one female prize winning person of all time with I think $200,000 or something, very good amount. They contrasted her with people like Kuroki from Dota 2.
That's what I mean.
Now, what's mad about that is, I even make the point in the video, forget Scarlett, just take the number one StarCraft winner of all time, which I think is Maru with about I think he's got maybe 500,000 or something, or maybe it was MC, one of the two, right? Whoever it is, by that logic, they're somehow being discriminated against because they haven't made the 3 million extra they need to be at Crockies levels. You don't even need to bring gender into it, do you?
Yeah, I mean, but once you start putting people who've competed at the international into it, you fucking completely skew it. It was just so stupid, and it's like, listen, I don't even have any issue particularly with what the author attempted to do, but it's just so stupefyingly ignorant and ill-informed. It was just that's before you even get to the maths. Maths is not my fucking strong suit, Dunk.
I did see someone point out, I actually didn't notice myself, because again, I'm like you, I haven't done fucking maths in ages. Someone actually pointed out that apparently even the way the percentages were calculated was completely wrong, and that was even the description of how they calculated it was
that was it.
Completely fabricated.
They described it, and there was loads of people messaging me going, that's just not how it works at all. And I'm going to take their word for it.
No, I didn't know it myself. I'm not trying to be smart on that one. I guess I would have just, if I knew it, you think I wouldn't have riffed on it, but I didn't say shit. I can't lie.
Yeah, I'm not a mathematician.
Oh, by the way, here's the mad thing, though. What you said there about, the impetus behind the article isn't obviously, in theory, a negative, right? What's mad is when I was actually doing the video, I'll make this point a couple of times. It's one of those examples of where what the article doesn't say and doesn't investigate is actually the part where if you're a journalist, you go, fuck yeah, why has no one ever investigated that? Because here's the thing, I've mentioned it, I've made this point in the past, for example, with Overwatch, because when the Overwatch League launched and they didn't have any women in the league, I mean, later on, Geguri, this Korean player, joined Shanghai Dragons. But before that, there were articles that were saying, you know, like it's obviously sexism keeping women out of professional Overwatch. So what actually happened was I actually had an idea at the time for an article. I don't think I've ever seen anyone attempt, which is, I thought, right, what if here's the thing, as a journalist, you can't just assume out of hand that there's no sexism and that nobody there is ever gatekeeping or blocking people. Yeah, I'm going to personally assume it's probably not systemic across the entire industry of every single team ever. And then as a result, it's bizarre that there isn't at least one. That probably suggests that they aren't good enough. But the point I actually thought of at the time was, what if you went to the semi-pro level, the level where you'd start to get like a trial to be in a team that's like one step away from pro, like just below it, which obviously would be the path that a top player would take to get to pro. I thought, right, what if you went to that level and you investigated and tried to find really talented female players who can get to that level? Because by the way, there's definitely women who've got to that level. You try to find them and say, like, did you ever have any experiences where someone told you, like, you can't join, and it seemed implicit or explicit that the reason was you're a woman? I could not get a single female player who A, had that experience, or B, the couple who claimed they had, none of them ever responded when I was like, listen, I'd like to actually write an article about this, investigate it, and possibly expose some of the corruption. And that really gets to the crux of why I think these kind of articles actually, the key thing is, not only can they do harm, but they do no productive good. Because one of the weirdest parts about them is this: if they're trying to expose, as the impetus always is, and trying to expose systemic, whatever it might be, racism, sexism, right? If it's systemic, then you don't need to talk in vague terms. You can actually go and nail a few of these fuckers. You can find the guy who owns an org who's like, there'll never be a woman in my org. Or the player who says, oh, I won't play with a woman. Or the coach who says, I don't want to trial her. Why? Well, you know, women have a lot of problems. You could find that guy, and that would be how you'd start to change the industry. If you could start to show the mechanisms by which sexism or racism manifests, and more importantly, literal cases. As soon as you out some of these fuckers, you'd start to really change the industry if it was a systemic problem. But I noticed none of these journalists are doing anything approaching that. None of them even seem to have that idea. And I have yet to see any evidence come forwards that this would even be, like, it could do it, basically. But it's certainly, like, as a thought experiment, something I think is interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add a point to that before we sort of get into the meat of the show, and it has been a fucking slow news week, so, you know, I hope people are not expecting, you know, this sort of roller coaster of news and roster changes, because that just hasn't been the case, and everyone's on fucking break right now. But, you know, I'll add to that point. I've done the exact same thing you've done, and I've said, like, well, why don't we go after these people? I'd love to do it.
Because, you know, Rich, like, I just actually, one point I should have very quickly made there. The point obviously is, I mean, you know this, most people who actually have watched my content know this, but I am in no way in favor of sexism against women. No, like, if you know my career, I have absolutely had to help women battle sexism that did exist, admittedly in esports journalism. It wasn't in actual pro play, etc. So if it actually did exist, I'm absolutely not in favor of it, or like everyone keeping hush hush or whatever. And I definitely don't like the idea that because you're in this culture war, the one side that's like, everything's sexist, if you say, well, that's actually provably wrong, I'll rebut that, then all of a sudden, all these fuckers who are sexist, they're like, yeah, you're with us, like, you're on the same side. You're like, what the, I'm definitely not on your side. Like, first of all, I'm on my own side only, and definitely not on your side.
Yeah, well, look, it's like I said, I think the issue is in a lot of cases, because I've done the same thing. I've said to, you know, when women have said, look, here's this instance of sexism that I've, you know, had happen to me. I've said, okay, well, why don't we go and nail these fuckers? I'll use my platform. Boom, we'll call them out specifically, and they have always been reluctant to do it. And you probably know a little bit about this yourself. It's a very fucking small industry, sure. And I think, first of all, there's the idea of sort of crying sexism, which can rile up certain members of the community. You know, and you know, the same kind of people, dare I say it, that rather than sort of critique, you know, Pansy's commentary, are the ones like, it's because she's a girl. And
people who are obviously sexist,
yeah, those fucking
on a low-key level, like they're maybe not even aware of it themselves, but they are actually, like, literally sexist in the way they're behaving.
Yeah, of course, yeah, and they are why we have the term incel now when they don't know it, and it's sad. But then the other reason why they don't want to do it is because they want to work again, plain and simple. I know many women in esports that have been subject to some pretty vile types of sexism, and they have always erred on the side, you know what, suck it up. And
yes.
let's get 2 or 3 years down the road, and maybe we talk about it then. And to put it into perspective, you know, there was this Riot article that came out recently over at Kotaku. I know it's Kotaku, you know, whatever. But I was talking about some of the instances that were outlined in that 2 years ago. And I'll say, yes, one of the sources in that article who's outed themselves is definitely an unreliable source and is definitely an unreliable narrator. But the rest... You know,
the gist is definitely accurate.
I'm amazed that that some of the stories that I know have happened aren't in there because they're far worse. They're far worse.
Sure.
And there was one tweet which was insane that just didn't get highlighted at all, which kind of shows the pull that Riot still have, I guess, over the mainstream gaming press. There was somebody who said that she would regularly hear her co-workers being sexually assaulted and or raped. And I was like, what the fuck?
That is fucking wild. What?
Yeah. And
I didn't even know it went to that level.
Yeah, and that tweet just seemed to dissipate into the ether. So, you know, look, I'll definitely say that. I totally understand why you might not want to come forward. You know, there's some days I wake up and it's like, imagine, you know, what like I go through on a daily basis is like probably, you know, I don't know, if different, let's say, I guess, to be sort of generous to myself, and without doing the whole fucking soy boy, oh God, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be a woman bullshit. You know, it's just different types of abuse you get on the internet. But I have days where I think, you know, what the fuck, do I want to hit publish on this? Because I know for the next week, this is what my week becomes. Now, imagine if it was a big company.
Oh, dude! Like, by the way, I know people think that, like, obviously, I do a very good. Like, my problem, I am obviously a victim of the success of my own fucking persona, right? Where sadly, I have made people believe that I just don't give a fuck. I say anything I think, you know. Obviously, neither of those are even vaguely approaching true. There's tons of things I think I don't say. Some of them, by the way, are nice things. I just think, fuck that, wouldn't even make sense with the character, would it? But more than that. Like, there are many times, like, for example, a lot of these pieces I've done recently, the one was where I've called out journalists and things they've done I thought were corrupt, where the upside isn't very much. Like, I'm not going to make much of YouTube from that. No one's going to give me a fucking award for that. Like, you only accrue, like, negative sort of currency in the industry for doing that. But the key thing I found with that scenario was, unlike things I've done in the past where sometimes, you know, maybe I've definitely have like a little bit of a mean streak to me, you know, if I'm pissed off, I probably pile a bit too much mustard on the hot dog, you know, like with ESL in the past, you know, it was a pretty obvious example. Sure. I definitely like sauced it up a bit, not in the actual, I never lied about anything, but I definitely like enjoyed wrecking them, if you get that. But actually on these more recent ones, when I'm about to publish, I think the same thing. I think, I'm just going to get shit for this. But what's been good recently, for me at least, with the actual articles, the work, is that because these have all been ones where I really did think about, like, is this important to do? Like, does someone need to actually say this? And more importantly, sometimes, can anyone else do this? Like, is anyone actually suited to have the knowledge base to explain why this is wrong or knows where to look to find a fact that rebuts it? Because I know it's kind of like a righteous takedown that I hope someone would do in the community anyway. Those ones I actually have a way better time. Because when I let it go and it's like that, I feel like if then like negative things come back, that's partly my doing because it couldn't exist without me. But it's overwhelmingly on the other person, I think, for that one. I agree if you make like, obviously, if you make some like opinion or whatever, that can draw all sorts of ire. But when it's the actual work and it's important, I think that's for me what's getting me through those sorts of like times where, like you're saying, you just think to yourself, should I just save myself the hassle? Like, does anyone really care that much?
And like, you know, obviously that to me historically has always been a defeat, right? Mentally, you're like, well, I'm not going to let them win because.
Oh, by the way, I'll even
self-censor.
By the way, dude, one reason I've even done it a bit more in the last few years in terms of work, because here's the thing, I always gave my opinions, but actually in terms of work, I tended to keep it squeaky clean. I won't lie, that's because when I was growing up and I had fucking no money and no life trajectory to have money, to have sponsorship, to have decent revenue. I was not going to do anything that would threaten that because I'd won, you know, I'd made it out. It's like fucking the end of Heat. Why would you go to that fucking hotel?
Grow, yeah.
What a shit character he was. Like, just go to a fucking Mauritius or something, wouldn't you? It's the stupid, when you watch it, you're screaming at the screen like, why are you doing this? Because you know what's going to happen, don't you? But the difference is, that's actually one thing that is why I've done it a bit more myself recently as well, is, to be fair, I actually do feel mildly guilty. Because since you're the best out in that sort of shit, a lot of us in the industry have past you stories that were like that were like the hot potato. Because first of all, we know you've done it before, so you'll do it. But more importantly, that means we don't take the heat for it. And to be fair, like, you are still better than me doing certain ones. You would get more out of it. But sometimes if it's one where, like, it is up my alley, I've got to take the boat myself sometimes. I can't just always be giving you...
And listen,
can't always be like, you go over first, Rich. I'll come back.
Look, the amount of times that somebody's fed me a story, and I know it's absolutely true, and they're the same people sort of condemning me publicly, by the way. You know, that's happened to me, like, just a fucking ton of times. And, yeah, a lot of people will say, oh, like, you know, can you... Here it is. Like, it's... You know, can you... fucking take it the rest of the way and put your name on it. But yeah, so look, I understand it. I think there's going to be more to come out with that Riot thing. But yeah, just on that point about the fucking pay gap, it's such a stupid argument to make. There's so many ways to debunk it that it's tired that it keeps coming up over and over again. And the other thing, you know, that I wanted to bring up as well, just while we're talking in generalities, you know, you've been talking about, you know, shit that's going on. Like, I can't believe we're still at a fucking point where we're getting the website we write for is getting DDoSed because they basically fucking pay us to write columns over there.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you know, what is...
It's wild, isn't it?
Like, why is that fucking happening, dude? I don't get it, like, at all.
That's a new thing as well. That never existed in the past.
Oh, and it used to happen to me all the time.
Oh,
yeah, it used to happen when I used to run Cadred all the time. Cadred used to get took offline every time I banned someone. You know. So, yeah, that used to happen all the time. But yeah, just fucking classic nonsense. Anyway, look, we'll start by talking about some Counter-Strike. There was an event that we didn't have time to talk about because we had to cancel the last week's show. IEM Shanghai. A big one. A big event with all the big teams there. Did have a couple of exciting teams there. I mean, for starters, I was keen to see how Gambit would do kind of on their first outing since announcing Blade. And they achieved a modest 3rd to 4th. Just to list all the teams that were there, by the way, guys, so you get an idea of the competition level in case you didn't watch the event. I did, actually. You had Greyhound, 5 Power, Boot DS, Hellraisers, Gambit, Virtus Pro, Tyloo, and NRG. So certainly not a tier 1 tournament in a conventional sense, but I was intrigued to see how Gambit would do, and they achieved 3rd to 4th. Eventually came unstuck against NRG, who were the eventual winners of the tournament. I don't know if you caught any of this. Did you get a chance to watch the games?
Yeah, I watched the final, the NRG Tyloo one, because that was one I was quite interested in. And I'd scanned a little bit of the other ones. A lot of the other results basically went as expected, you know. Like, obviously, everyone has to remember Virtus Pro has a stand-in at the time because they hadn't completed their signing, and Snacks had obviously already gone to Mouse Sports. So even though, like, admittedly, Tyloo with a stand-in themselves almost beat the real Virtus Pro about, like, I think it was like 2 months ago when I was at that CSGO Asian Championship. It actually makes a lot of sense that, like, Virtus Pro wouldn't go that deep in this one, you know? Like, they were a team that obviously was like a hobbled, like, just makeshift roster until they could complete this signing.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I didn't want to judge them too much, like, on their kind of first outing or whatever. But yeah, it was you know, they didn't do too bad. I wouldn't say they looked to be much of a different side. This was kind of the level of performance that they were at before. It didn't look like any of the radical changes I was expecting from Blade had actually been implemented yet. So I don't know if this is something that now is the time to work on it in the break, and they kind of just went there on a wing and a prayer. But you know, like I said, it did go out to the eventual winners. The Virtus Pro thing was kind of interesting. I thought actually they overperformed a little bit here. Like, I had Virtus Pro kind of. I just expected them to actually just suck to get third to fourth at an event to make it to the semis.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. If every team had the proper lineup, I think they would have. But the thing was, Woxic couldn't play for Hellraisers. So I agree. If Woxic was there, I'd have said that you're right. I think the VP was on the cards to not even get out of the group, which would have been the ultimate indignity. Like, as you're saying, tournament taking place during the player break, a bunch of squads that like aren't top tier. Teams like Tyloo barely get to come to the West, and then if you don't even get out of your group there, it'd be like fucking hell. But obviously they kind of got a break on that one, which, by the way, if you notice, kind of depressing. But this is becoming a trend for Woxic. It happened in America, now in China. Like this, unfortunately, you can't do it this way, mate, if you want to be a top player. Not his fault, he's from Turkey. That's the whole reason, as far as I know, but it's a bit rough.
Yeah, and I mean, it certainly is an ongoing issue that they've got. Look, I thought that... this is something that would be put to bed by now. This whole fucking can't get visas and whatnot in esports. I guess not. I seem to remember that Riot Games company talking about how they cracked that particular nut with the American government and it was going to be free visas for all. But international travel is still a constant fucking problem, and it really hurts a team like Hellraisers when your star player is from Turkey. But still. You've got to beat the teams that are put in front of you. I thought Virtus.pro had a pretty good outing. I mean, no strangers to problems themselves right now, right? They're constantly fucking around with their lineup. People don't even know what's going on there long term. I still keep getting told that Neo's is on the precipice of retirement. That is definitely going to happen. Okay. But then the fucking general manager and owner of Virtus.pro or whatever the fuck was coming out and saying, well, we've been in talks with, what was it, a top team in the world. And we had this question before when we were talking about what a Virtus.pro going to do. Is the Polish market so important to them? They're going to stay Polish and they're going to try and cycle Polish players into the lineup.
It does look like the snatchy ones, like the last gap. It's like, right, we'll give you the guy who who looks like the best Polish player, not in VP, basically. And like, if this doesn't work, I think it's probably just axe the lineup, right? I mean, what's the point in keeping it? They're not even inherently Polish, as you're implying. Like, remember, I always see Virtus.pro. I still think Russian. It's a CIS squad.
Yeah, this is what I mean, though. So I don't understand where the balance shifted to a point where they kind of felt that the Polish demographic was so like vitally important to their business model. I have no idea why they're thinking along those lines.
If Pasha leaves, because bear in mind he's the one who like always tweets as though he's going to retire.
He's emo as fuck, dude. It's crazy.
If he leaves, I don't even know if Neo anymore is actually as big a market and draw as people say. Like, I mean, he's never really been a star player in CS:GO. He's still got some value, clearly, and obviously to Polish fans. But I don't feel like he actually is the big world superstar. In fact, if you notice on forums, most people agree with the point you've often made, which is that like considering Forrester's been a star in CS:GO and 1.6, most people don't even think that's a debate anymore.
Yeah, it's just so fucking strange. And it's like I say, for me, at this juncture, what are you even holding on to? Like, what is so precious about the remnants of that sort of, golden 4? Because it wasn't even the golden 5. What is so precious about it now that is worth holding on to? That are you going to keep Pasha on a streaming contract? That would make sense, I suppose. That's probably worth doing. But, do you move Neo to, like, general manager? Maybe. But at the end of the day, none of that suggests that you should be hiring, Polish players to sort of try and keep this. And it's like, I think Mihu's done well and Bialy's had a resurgence. I like Snatchy. I think it's a decent pickup. But honestly, I think there's just too much drag factor with everything that's going on. You're reliant on too much stuff. There's now, like, no cohesion to this team. You've got a group of people. Like, who's the fucking leader? It's a mess of a different sort that they've got now.
That's why I also thought the weird part to me was the fact that they kept going with the Polish players. Because it's like, unless you think this is like a move where it's just a slam dunk, like, this guy's so good, all we need is that type of player. No problem, everything's fixed. The whole team overnight's going to be great, which clearly they've been having, as you've been saying, similar problems as they've changed each player. Like, the team doesn't get that much different. They still do the same things well, the same things poorly. So actually, I would have thought if you were the cynical sort of organization you'd imagine Virtus.pro is from the public persona they have, I would have thought, if anything, what you'd start telling the players is, listen, I'll stick with your team. You can have this core, but you've got to start getting in players, and we're going to speak in English now. It's going to be an international team, and then the ones that you can perform with you get to stay around. Maybe Bialy stays, maybe Neo stays. But eventually, this will probably be a non-Polish team, but we'll let you transition to that. I would have thought that would be the cynical way to go with how crazy buyouts are and all the rest of it,
Yeah, and what did you make of all of this fucking change in the colours as well? Like, it seems like it's a
know what the point of that is. I thought they were one of the most recognisable colour sets and brands. I even think their logo's pretty cool, the original one, that bear. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, I can't understand why they have a polar bear. I know this is probably really dumb of me, but I can't understand it. Like, why?
I mean, I assume the logic's just that, like, Russian bear or whatever the fuck, isn't it? But, like, I agree. I don't know why it'd be a polar bear.
Yeah. Like, I mean, assuming that's what it is, and it's not just a fucking albino Russian bear, that just wandered in. But like, yeah, you're right. The colours, the reason they changed the colours is that their partnership with Megafon, which is a big Russian telephony company, it's their colours.
Right.
It's the colour of Megafon. So it's basically like we have taken on board the colours.
It does feel like a bit of an investment that it's changing the whole colour scheme.
Yeah, I know. I don't. But I'm trying to think of an example of time where it's happened in like real sports, where that's actually happened, where sponsors colours and
like that ever happened?
I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I mean, it must have.
Because if anything, that's the analogy, isn't it? That's weird. Is like, if anything, what you always criticize about like football, for example, is that the cunts just keep the same exact colour scheme, don't they? Like the old joke with the Man United one in the 90s that used to make fun of all the Man United fans where, they were like 12 years old, didn't know anything about football, but Man United had won the last 3 premierships or something. They'd just be going, "Oh, I've got my new jersey." And you'd be like, "Your mum had to pay £60 so that badge could move 5 pixels and become slightly more round, you absolute mess." Like, this is where the old one, it's not worth born out, is it?
There is an example actually from Wales. Yeah, I remember this because Cardiff City, right? Cardiff are famously called the Bluebirds, right, and always have been, and their colour's always been blue. And then I think they got I think it was a sponsor, but anyway, they changed their colour to red. Like, so you go the complete like the typical antithetical colour, yeah. To it.
Now we're the Redbirds.
Yeah, it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, so I mean,
everyone who's got a tattoo is like, fucking.
Well, yeah. I mean, but imagine it. Imagine you wake up one day and it's like, we're the fucking Bluebirds, but our shirts are fucking red. And I think it was something to do. People are saying it might have been the had an Asian owner, and obviously red's like quite a significant color in Asia. Doesn't it mean good luck or something?
I believe in China, it's good luck or whatever, something like that.
So I don't know, but anyway, I will say this: purple and green is a fucking hideous color scheme.
Especially because, mate, I have that colour blindness where colours that are like sort of close to each other are the ones that fuck with my eyes, and that's like a perfect example of one where it's like, if I look at one of the colours and then the other one, it's like just like morphing in front of my eyes, like the fucking techno frog or something. That's like, so I'm like, what are you doing right now?
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of it, but I mean as well, like I can understand why they'd want to appease fucking sponsors right now. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I think maybe it's not as important because the internationals here, and I think VP are a good shout for that.
They're one of the best teams, yeah.
Yeah, so they're my pick. Not that anyone cares about who my pick is, which is why I haven't done a video on it. But the point I was trying to make was that you talk about like the money that sort of comes back into organizations, from other areas. So you get like like I say, if the London Spitfire are doing good at Cloud9 and fucking. Their League of Legends team's been doing good, and they've had a couple of decent performances in some other areas. Well, obviously, all of a sudden, having a dog shit CS:GO team's not as much of a fucking priority to fix, right? It doesn't matter. It's just another, it's just a brand spreading out. It just keeps you engaged in a scene. It doesn't matter if they underperform. Whereas, if, for example, all your teams were underperforming and maybe some sponsors think, fucking hell, this Cloud9 thing's not looking so good, maybe the impetus to sort of replace players and get one team back on being a genuine contender again suddenly takes on a different complexion. And I think you're right in the sense that the fact they've got like the best Dota team, arguably the best Dota team in the world. I think it's fair to say they're the best team in the world, but I guess some people would disagree. It has probably allowed them to kind of just be like, well, whatever in regards to the CS:GO. I don't think it's going to be like that for much longer, though. I will certainly say that once the international's fucking done, they're probably going to knuckle down and fix the fucking, fix the CS:GO team.
Oh, and the other part as well that you have to consider, because this is one of those areas where back in the day when I was just a purist, I only watched the games, I only cared about the results. I was actually very naive about a lot of industry stuff. I mean, admittedly, I'm talking about like 10 years ago now, but that stuff I actually am glad I got interested in and learned about, because a lot of things that you think this doesn't make sense make perfect sense. So, for example, if you remember, I always bring this up, that when I looked into it last year, 2017, almost every event Virtus.pro attended, they were invited to, even though a lot of them, they were going out before the playoffs, last place. So, to be fair, that alone, like the cachet of like tournament organizers wanting them for the fans probably also bought them a lot more time with the org, especially to keep that lineup, obviously. So that's been different this year. You'll notice they have not got all the invites to the big events, and then when they've had to go through online qualifying, guess what? It ain't working for them. So I think if anything, the chickens have come home and roost on that one.
So the other thing that happened was, it was the Tyloo NRG final. Tyloo have been playing really well. They knocked out Virtus.pro, who we were just talking about. They topped their group, which had Gambit in it. And I think we've all kind of got on the same page when we're talking about, Tyloo looking like an exciting team. They've got Captain Mo's come back. He's still having a few health issues, but, he's back and he's playing and actually has been performing above sort of the expectations that I had for him. But at this event, the one thing I'll say is they made it to the final. I was expecting NRG Tyloo would be a pretty exciting final, back and forth. I think, my views on like Ben Tet, for example, are very, well established at this point. But they absolutely fucking capitulated. Like, I've not seen, like, for a home crowd, I haven't really seen a sort of just we're just not going to try, fuck it. We're done.
No, dude,
in the second map especially, that they just hit a point where it was 16-2 for those that didn't catch it on Mirage, and that was Tyloo's pick, and it was just like they just absolutely stopped. They just put down tools at one point, and that was the end of it. It was just ridiculous, even to the point where NRG were like sort of laughing while they were playing. It was just that easy for them, and I guess that's going to be something that they're going to have to really overcome if they want to make inroads at these. I mean, this for me is a potential tournament win for Tyloo.
Yes,
and I know it's obviously NRG are a decent team, and and Cirque had a fucking monstrous performance in the final, but there was like no cohesion, no spirit. Like they didn't even take timeouts. You know what I mean? It was like they just hit a point where they were like, "Fuck it, we're done. We just want to get out." And I just thought it was really weird to do that sort of in front of a home crowd, effectively.
Well, especially because the weird part is, like, first of all, famously, Chinese teams in Counter-Strike have performed better in China. I mean, there's obviously other circumstances as to why.
Of course, yeah.
But actually, that's one of the factors, is that obviously they do get those. It's famous in esports history, the very, very weird crowd. Like, anyone who wants to hate on NA crowds, by the way, like, shut the fuck up. First of all, they don't even boo that much. I mean, as we saw with the fucking Belo Horizonte crowd, it can get a lot worse. They just boo in a way like it's wrestling, Obviously, they boo the other team that's not from their area if Cloud9's playing. And they cheer for Cloud9, but let's be real. If in the next match, Cloud9 and Team Liquid aren't playing, and it's like Virtus.pro versus NiP, they're going to cheer in that game too. The Chinese fans legit don't give a fuck. They just cheer for the Chinese team. And then if the Chinese team's losing, they go deathly silent. And so actually, Tyloo, when I was at that CSGO Asia Championships, they were getting all the crowd support. And actually, they were doing that thing where, it looked like they were loving it. They were living up to the moment, etc. But yeah, that is a bit sad, because you'd expect, like, if anything, you're on home soil. NRG's had their own moments where they've been a little bit weak at times. You should have been up for that one.
Yeah, it was really weird. And like I say, I think with all the issues that NRG have had of late, like I was surprised they bounced back and were able to go far here. I didn't expect it at all, actually, that they were going to go, to the final. And they did it playing really fucking well all the way through. But yeah, they obviously got a tournament win here, and we were kind of on the last episode talking about all their kind of deficiencies and whatnot, and all the issues that they'd had, and how nobody was sort of getting on the coach's back after giving them a lot of praise. Well, apparently whatever they did in the interim period certainly worked, because in terms of a team that missed out on getting to the major, this is still a stretch, I would say, for them to come through and win, given the caliber of teams here who are more internationally experienced. I think they can hold their heads very high. They took a pretty tough route to the final as well, and were able to beat the home team on home soil in emphatic fashion, including a drubbing on the map that their opponents picked. So very impressive from NRG. I did see a lot of people saying stuff like, "Oh, it's such a shame that NRG aren't going to be at the They're not going to be at the fucking major because they fucked up and didn't qualify." Like,
they lost
I don't understand
best of threes on LAN.
Yeah, I don't understand that mindset at all. That they there's some sort of prevailing sentiment about how they deserve to be there and how they'd enrich the fucking tournament. Sure. At the end of the day, they had a fucking pretty easy route. We talked about how non-competitive the NA minor was in comparison to other NA minors that they've been. It should have been a free ticket for them, and they absolutely shit the bed. So I don't know why anybody would come out and bat for that. But
no, that's one of those mad strawmen that me and Lurpus get all the time, right? And I'm fairly sure I haven't actually asked him on this specific topic, but I think he has a similar perspective to me, which is the strawman is you just want bloody the best team you want the higher ranked team to win every game, and they're never to be an upset. And basically, if it was up to you, you just invite all the teams to the tournament. Definitely would not do that. Never ever had that perspective. All I want is, when you lose, it to feel like it was a real match and you got actually outplayed. If that happens, I'm totally fine with anyone outplaying them. Like, for example, you have never heard me ever complain about Gambit beating Astralis in that PGL Krakow semi-final. Even though, by the way, if Astralis wins that third map, they almost certainly just win like back-to-back majors. Then we can start talking about all sorts of crazy shit, like who gives a fuck about SK. Like, it would have basically been like my dream scenario. But because they played a best of three and Gambit legit outplayed them on 2 maps, you could just give it up, haven't you? They obviously deserve to win in that scenario.
Yeah, like I say, I was super happy that they did, because this is a team, like, I feel with every passing tournament where they don't perform well, there is a risk that this team's going to break up, and I think it's one of the most exciting young teams that have been put together in NA history. I think it's imperative that they all stay together and develop as a team. I think if you start taking 1 or 2 out, that's it, the whole thing's going to come apart, and maybe those players don't even necessarily go and perform at other teams. I think, and that would fucking suck. But like, I guarantee that if they had a poor performance here after the major, this maybe even before, this side would have been picked apart. Like, I feel that a sustained period of success for them is crucially important. Otherwise, some people's heads are going to get turned, because we all know Cirque's going to have Cirque's got an option to go to any team in NA probably at this stage. Orpin, as well as he does, is cleared internationally. I think, with Cloud9, all the problems they've got, I guess we can sort of segue into that. Obviously, they announced they're going to keep Golden and Sticko, which wasn't a surprise. I mean, DK had already said as much in his report. But, I mean, just think about the Cloud9 roster where you get, you get Cirque, which apparently was something that they thought about at one point and may even have had talks towards. I think it was kind of reported out there.
Yes.
And then, I don't know, you throw in, I mean, you can take your pick, I suppose, of another guy from that team. Maybe some people might want to go for Ethan. Maybe some people might want to go for Breezy. All of a sudden, I think, again, Cloud9 takes on a very different complexion. And got to be available, right? I mean, for the spending power. I don't know what the contracts are like at NRG, but historically they've never been able to retain talent at their organization across multiple games.
I heard they have actually pretty good salaries. Like, it's very, very competitive, and so. But I agree. The part of the problem there is, I do think Cloud9's on the borderline of fucking this up now, but Cloud9 does still have that thing where, especially because they just won a major even less than a year ago, even if the money's the same, even if your team's slightly better, it's like if I'm in a team that's doing pretty well now. Okay, I'll give you the football analogy. Obviously, if you were on Leicester City when they won the championship, right? Brilliant. You've won the fucking Premier League. Impossible. How did you do it? But let's be real. You're not going to win the next year, are you? In fact, as you'd expect and as happened, you're just going to go right back down again. So if you get that offer after that season to join Manchester United, some historically great team that will always put together some degree of talent that has a chance to compete, you got to take that offer, haven't you? Part of you is going to feel like, here's the problem. Even if you do it doesn't work out. You'd rather that than the one where it's the great stories in history of Matthew Le Tissier could have gone to Man United, whatever.
Chelsea as well. Yeah.
You don't want to be that guy who 20 years later is just telling that story in a pub. I could have been on that team. It's no one gives a fuck, mate. Sorry.
But yeah, so overall, what did you make of NRG winning this tournament? Like, is this is this something like that we should sit up and take notice about, especially bouncing back after their poor minor performance, or is this the kind of tournament that honestly this is a team that should be winning tournaments of this standards?
They were obviously, in terms of like ranking, the favourite to win the tournament. I agree, definitely wasn't a done deal though, because you look at some of the other squads out there. Some of those squads can fucking grind. They can obviously get upsets. There's a lot of veterans in these squads actually. But the thing for me about this tournament was, this is the first tournament I've actually seen where I thought that NRG lived up to that online hype from months and months ago. Even when they made like the final of the Star Series one, their bracket was kind of whack there. I don't know what happened to Team Liquid. Team Liquid's had their own fuck-ups a few times in tournaments. I think they kind of gifted them that one. Then they had the ECS one where they made top 4, but that was where, even though, yes, they beat FaZe. First of all, FaZe does have a standing. You're supposed to lose some
was a best of one as well, of course.
Yeah, and it was a best of one, and obviously they won the best of ones and got to the group stage at the semi-finals. So in those circumstances, there's a bunch of asterisks there. But this is the first one I've seen where, when I watched those games where they were like tearing up online play, this is how they actually played. Like, the team looked super structured. Everything was set up for Cirque, but then he hit every shot, and every fucking flick shot with it up was on point. Like, he's been good in other tournaments. They've been good, but they've never hit that like ridiculous online peak that they've had. So sure, if you add in the best teams in the world, they're probably not going to do that against those teams. But it's definitely promising that they've done this on land now and for a whole tournament.
Yeah, and it's really pushed them up in the rankings too. Like, if you look at the HLTV rankings, if you look at the teams, so they're 7th right now, and that puts them above MIBR, puts them above Fnatic, puts them above North.
I'm not a fan of that personally. Like, here's the thing.
Puts them above G2.
Obviously, I'm mildly speaking out of school here because I'd have to look into exactly how the rankings are calculated. But off the top of my head, I would guess something along the lines of that. This is the flaw, I believe, with point-based rankings, is what happens when you assigned a certain amount of points to a tournament that on paper, remember, this tournament had loads of prize money, has an IEM name on it. It's considered like a premier tournament or whatever the fuck. Those all sound wicked, but the field there is way worse than some of the events I went to that are considered like the lesser tier ones, that don't have any of the big qualities. So I wonder on this one if they just had assigned like a lot of points to win an event like that, and it doesn't matter that you didn't beat anyone really good. Because the problem is, if you're going to do a points-based system where you really do just step back, like, hey, I don't touch this, it's the computer that figures it out, then in my opinion, the only way you can error correct is you've got to put some sort of elaborate like ELO system in where, you have to also beat certain opponents to get certain points, and if you don't beat those opponents, so you get an easy run through a tournament, somehow the computer knows how to not give you the maximum points, as opposed to if you'd had a really good run. But that's very complicated to do, and as far as I know, they do not have that on this system. So this is one of the areas where, as much as people think it's a positive to have a predetermined system with no human bias, well, the whole point is that's where human bias, when I do it on my rankings, is helping me, because I know not to give them loads of points for winning this tournament.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where they might be a little bit artificially high. I mean, it's not that I put any great stock in MIBR or even necessarily North or even G2. But, I'd like to see a sort of big international tournament again with NRG there. And obviously we're not going to see that now in a relevant time period to sort of ascertain. I think this is probably like the peak or as close to like top 5 as NRG are going to get, especially once the fallout from the major settles and teams decide whether they're going to stick or twist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, but, at the end of the day, like breaking into that top 10, like, when this team was put together, I'm sure no one fucking had any great shakes. No one thought it was going to do anything. So
plus, that's the depressing part, right? Here's the thing. I do leave the caveat that a bunch of their players are really young. So you never know. Sometimes with a young player, you can get the found money scenario of like, he just gets like 1.5 times better for no reason because the guy was like 19 and he just hasn't developed. That can happen. It's the equivalent but it's the equivalent of going like, do we need to change a player in our fucking high school football team? This guy might hit a growth spurt. It's like, well, you can't bank on it, can you? Like, if it happens, great. If it doesn't, then it just doesn't happen. So the problem is, as a team, they've kind of hit their peak, I think. I'm with you on that one. So my issue with them is they're already probably in the best spot they are. Meanwhile, you look at all the other squads, the MIBRs of the world, obviously fucking North, a bunch of these squads. These squads are either a roster move or some sort of development from actually being good. At the moment, they look wonky and around the same sort of ranking. So you can definitely see, like, it's going to be one of these teams at least is going to go up, if not a couple.
Yeah, and of course I'm wrong, aren't I? Because we have got DreamHack Stockholm. I keep forgetting that Energy are at that one. I know it's coming round. It's actually got a pretty good lineup.
Yes,
of teams. I'm actually looking forward to that. It's going to be a fucking well-needed event on the calendar because it's like, you know, so fucking quiet right now. Like I'm watching like late night online Counter-Strike again, which I always promised I wouldn't do it myself. I'm watching fucking late night fucking NA games. I'm watching Swole Patrol style on people. You know, it's depressing. But look, so the show can get a lift now. It's all been a bit serious and a bit flat. But I know what'll help pick up the show and bring some much needed comedy and brevity to the discussion, and that is Peacemaker.
He's back.
He's back, baby, but not really back.
Him, he's always back, isn't he?
No, not really back. He's had 4 months out on the sidelines, and he. If people remember, like this motherfucker just is always giving people updates. Like, remember me? like, yeah, mate, it's hard to fucking forget. Your fucking resume is the stuff of nightmares, brother. Obviously, we remember. You are a fucking internet meme. And I remember when everyone was talking about fucking MIBR and you know, they're getting a coach and will it be Peacemaker and all this, and what a fucking disaster that would have been. For everyone involved. But he put out a Twitlonger post anyway, talking about it, which I've actually sent across to Sam. I don't know if you want to bring it up, but I'll read it. And I just thought it was like, I don't know if anybody was really worried about what Peacemaker was doing. I don't know if anybody in the community was like, gee willikers, mister. I wonder what that Peacemaker is like. I don't think anybody gave a fuck. It's like, at this point, it is a miracle to me that he is still in consideration for top teams. But it was really bizarre anyway, because first of all, he made a point of saying, I was at Heroic for 7 months. Everybody, this is literally how the Twitlonger opens. Like, I was at Heroic for 7 months. In case you've all forgot. Like, yeah, okay, brilliant. What an achievement. Well done. You made a little over half a year at a team for the first time in about fucking 3 years.
That is that classic one, isn't it? It's like, yeah, but what does that imply about the other teams you were with for very long time? Yeah, I know, right? You've done yourself, haven't you, on that one?
Yeah, no, but again, he just doesn't understand it. It's the way as well. Like, I'll say this, right? You know Will Wheaton, right? You know Will Wheaton. Of course,
yeah,
good.
By the way, I like to just imagine that, you know, he just retired into a cabin in the woods after Next Generation, character I dearly loved. You know, obviously as a young man, saw a bit of myself in, you know, in the
I can imagine. Yeah.
Sadly, seeing what he's become since then. Fucking like, sends a chill up your spine there, but for the grace of God, go all of us, Rich.
Yeah, but it's like, you know how like fucking.
By the way, did you see that thing where he gets so triggered online that he said he was going to block everyone who says like "Shut up, Will"?
And
then Parrot Stewart said it to him like right after that. Just said, like, "Shut up, Will." Just like that's
well, technically he didn't say "Shut up, Wesley." That was the thing. Yeah,
it was the get out, but it was good.
But anyway, so like he's kind of like, once you get to a point, right, where you are constantly defending your existence as a meme, you're never going to be free. There really comes once you're at that point, you have got to embrace it. Like in the same way,
that's something that actually, I mean, I'm not obviously about the recent incident, but some of the things in the past that have happened to Sadikis that got out that weren't great about him, he actually always used to say that, like, you've got to embrace the meme. And even though he definitely might have done it in some stupid ways, I do think he's right on one level. Like, it's not necessarily that you have to embrace it entirely. Like, you might not like it on whatever, but you've got to like be part of telling the story. That's why actually we've brought it up on the past. Yeah. I actually do love it when your fans now do that thing where they make it like more and more ridiculous when they bring up the loader thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It has taken all the sting out of it.
Yeah, no, it was the only way. It was the only way it was ever going to go like my way. You know, I realized this. I used to fight against it all the time. I even used to ban my own fucking followers for bringing it up, my own supporters. I was just sick of it. Like 3 years of it. You know what I mean? 3 years 3 years, you've acted in self-defense one time, and people use it to mischaracterize who you are, and they tell all these fucked up versions about it. And then what I quickly realized was, like, they're not doing it to be malicious. They're doing it because they see the absurdity the same way I do. And now it's become Richard Lewis, alt-right leader Richard Lewis, through 12-year-old loader through a steel cage at Hell in the Cell DreamHack 2015. And, literally, you see these comments everywhere it's brought up right now. And it's like, what that achieves is, it's like somebody running defense for you all the time. Because what that achieves is, if somebody was on the fence and didn't know what to believe, and they go, yeah, didn't Richard Lewis savagely beat Loader at a Dota event while he was on stage? And somebody else goes, no, actually, he chokeslammed him through a table at Hell in the Cell. Anybody who sort of drifts past that goes, oh, yeah, well, that's just a meme, isn't it? That's just stupid. So I don't need to ever defend it now. And this is the thing, like, for a moment, I was showing this ridiculous sort of, vulnerability about it, and people will exploit that if you let them. And it's the same with sort of, Will Wheaton here. And it's the same with Peacemaker. He is not embracing the joke. Yeah. He takes himself so seriously that he even opens up a twit longer about, here's what I'm doing, future plans, completely unneeded. He literally put this out because he didn't get the MIBR job, and people were like going, thank fuck for that, and he put this out, and he couldn't just like say, oh, well, look, I know I've had some ups and downs of late, mostly downs, and just sort of leave it there. It's like, no, I was heroic for 7 months, everybody. That's like literally how he's, choosing to open this. And it's like, why can't you just fucking admit you fucking had like these unbelievably short-term stays that have pretty much resulted in abject failure at teams? Just say it. It's okay. Like,
we're not even spin it. Like, I'll give you a tip here, Peacemaker. What I would do is basically the approach. Like, I'll give you a classic fucking reference. I forget the name of the actual movie though. You'll know it when I tell you. Yeah. You know that movie that had, oh fuck, I've even forgotten the name. What's the name of that classic white actor comedian, Steve? What's his name? The guy Martin. Who was in like Little Shop of Horrors. Yeah, Steve Martin. There Steve we go. Martin, yeah. You remember he did that movie where he plays like a faith healer, but he's a fraud in it. You remember, right?
Yeah. Oh, God,
I'm assuming it's going to be called like Touched by God or something. Everyone can look this up on IMDb. It's in the 80s, and he plays a fraudulent faith healer who's doing those big like televangelist style things where the guy comes up in the wheelchair and they're like, by the fire of God, and then what happens is they have a psychosomatic effect where they feel like they're healed for a while, they hobble off stage, and then you sort of like bung them in a fucking taxi and go like, yeah, get home quick or whatever, because obviously it's going to wear off, but everyone's just so imbued with the Spirit of God, they're giving you all the money. Well, what happens in the movie, by the way, since no one knows this fucking movie, it doesn't matter, I'm going to give like a semi-spoiler, but at one point in the movie, someone basically manages to expose him that he's a fraud and that his whole backstory is a lie. Like, he had this whole story about, he was just left by his mother on like a fucking bus stop and he had to like make it himself, but like God helped him. And basically it comes forward that he wasn't, and he's been lying and he's been a sinner his whole life. So what he does is, like, in the moment where you're like, fuck, the jig's up, he just spins it. And because he's a natural showman, he just goes with the angle of like, well, who's going to talk to you about sin? Who's going to show you the way to the light, except the man who was at the bottom, who did lie, where everything was a lie to him. And then he turns this whole thing and he gets the whole fucking crowd back on his side instantly. And what you realize is it had nothing to do with the facts. He just spun a better story. That's what Peacemaker should have done. He should have been like, you know what? I agree. I was almost a joke. I understand why people look at me in those teams and go like, oh, Peacemaker, he's going to be gone in 3 months. Because you know what? I actually had to learn some things. I thought because I had a lot of knowledge about the game, people should respect me or I automatically should get my way. And what I learned was, I had to learn to work with people, and I've humbled myself a lot while I've been away. In fact, because he just had these health problems, I'd even spin that in and be like, it's made me realize like I've got to do something with my life now. Like I've got a second chance. That would be a sick way. Like even if I'd be cynical, but part of me would even be like, if any of this is even vaguely true, I'm sort of on board with this.
Well, look, I'm again. I think it's. Is it? Here's a question for you, Duncan. I probably shouldn't ask you questions about propriety, but is it proper for me to say I think this is all bullshit? Am I allowed to do that?
Because I will say
there's this part about the health problem.
That is always going to. The ultimate get out will always be either vague allusion to health problems, or and this is obviously like I agree, this is a dodgy topic, so I'm going to be very careful how I say this.
Yeah.
The other dodgy one is you don't say what it is, therefore you can get away with a lot of leeway on this. But this term is so loaded, no one will ever question it. You just say you are having some serious family problems. Now that can mean a million things, but the problem is because that sounds like literally like someone very close to you might have died, no one will ever question it. So if you really want the ultimate get out, that's it. And the reason why I say this, and it might sound cynical, is because I already know on a low level in the Overwatch league that a bunch of players who just were like, you know, a bit lost confidence or weren't getting along with a player, the go-to excuse was they would just say, oh, he's having health issues. Yeah, he's ill at the moment. And like, that's not as bad, but they were playing the same game, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, of course. It's like when you call in sick, you always tell your boss you got diarrhea. No one wants to talk about diarrhea.
Sure.
If you've got a cold, they say can't take some pills.
Obviously.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody wants you.
You go, listen, boss, I could try and get the bus in if you want. Oh bloody hell, I'm just gonna go now. He's like, no, you're right, you can stay in.
I'm on the pan. Yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm on the pan at the moment, but once I'm empty, I'll come in. Like, no, it's all right, mate. You fucking stay. No one wants to discuss your diarrhea, so you always tell them you got diarrhea. But like, look, I'm gonna say it because fuck it. Who cares at this point? Like, you know, if people are gonna come at me, like they're gonna come at me for this. But like, just read the health section, okay? He says, even though Refresh Entertainment and Heroic gave me full support and assistance while I was in Denmark, my main goal was to go back to Brazil and count with the support from my family, as well as start to investigate what was happening with me. I was getting dizzy, chest and abdominal pain, heartburn after eating, basically a constant bad mood. As soon as I got back to Brazil, I did a lot of medical exams, and one of the doctors made a huge misconception that made me very scared and also slowed down my recovery process, as after a small change on an electrocardiogram, it's a heart monitor, for people out there, we found out that the problem I had, apart from the panic and being scared after the first diagnostic, was a gastritis crisis and also a food poisoning infection that had caused bad reactions in my body, moving away any problems related to my heart. And he adds here, the doctor wanted me to stay in hospital. The first doctor wanted me to stay in hospital in an observation period because he suspected I could be having a heart attack. Now, I will say this. I don't know what Mickey Mouse doctor you've gone to here, right? But there's just no fucking way. Like, it's usually the other way. You're having a heart attack, and they tell you you're in gastric crisis, and they send you home, and you die, or you end up coming back to the hospital. No, it's definitely a fucking heart attack. That's what usually goes down. I don't know what kind of fucking doctor you would have to be to be like, oh, slight change on your fucking cardiogram here. You have got fucking, you're this close to a heart attack, my friend. You need to stay. Like, there's no way. Like, that is fucking didn't happen. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he did see the world's most fucking inept doctor, but it just doesn't make sense to me. And it's like, again, given the history that this guy's got of trying to revise it to, like, you know, paint himself as a sympathetic character and everything, I'm just kind of, I don't know, it doesn't wash with me. I know I'm going to get shit for this. I know people are going to say, fucking hell, Richard, how dare you, how dare you. I just don't give a fuck anymore. I'm sorry. I just think this is bullshit, and I can't stand it.
There's also have a history of lying, to be fair. So as soon as you lie, I'm sorry, even though it is not logically consistent, people will take everything you say as a potential lie.
No. Here's what I will say: if all of it's true, as somebody that had a medical recently myself, and was very apprehensive about what they're going to find, because you never know. My heart would, no pun intended, definitely go out to you over this. But
it feels bloody sick to your stomach as well.
Yeah, I would. But anyway. It turns out, he just had a bit of an upset stomach, and
then he goes, "Oh, bloody hell!" So if I haven't had a heart attack, can I start eating all those kebabs again? You eating kebabs, eh? Yes, love them. Get them. I don't get them from the street vendor. You know that guy. He's just sat out there. You wake him up at night. He's going, "All right, you eating them, will you?" Yeah. Think I'll be okay, Doc? You'll make it. You'll make it through the night.
But anyway, so he then brings up MIBR as well. It's a long twit longer.
Speaking of calling out bullshit.
Yeah, I know, right?
That part is unreal, the MIBR Fallen statement.
Well, I haven't even got to the Fallen stuff. I don't know if you want to. I don't know if you want to bring that up.
No, but if we were going to tie that in.
Yeah, let's do it then. So it says here, during these months away, obviously, I kept following the tournaments and the teams and updating my knowledge as much as I could and cheering for the teams I like. Of course, this includes SK, MIBR, as it is impossible for a Brazilian to not cheer for the best team in your region, even more in my case where I have friends and people there that helped me a lot in my career. It was hard for me from an outside point, okay, that sentence is a little bit jumbled, but what I do think MIBR needs to do to get back on being the best team in the world. But of course, I felt and still feel like I'm totally capable of helping them. But in my eyes, their recent bad performances goes deeper than having a coach behind or not. As soon as I heard they were potentially looking for a new coach, of course I was expecting I could be the choice. But I tried to stay calm and collected about it. Yesterday, I saw an interview Fallen gave to Drift 5 GG website, which was also posted on hltv.org, and I wanted to make sure I first thank him privately, but I also would like to make public all my affection, respect, and honor to be considered for the spot, as well as hear great things about me from one of the people that I most admire in CS, and that deserves all the success he has. I'd like to congratulate all of them for their strong decision on bringing Yanko on board, and I really hope they achieve all their goals from now on because they deserve it. So there's just so much wrong with this, Duncan. Why would you be expecting it? You have failed at these smaller teams. You left your last one citing health problems in a weird fucking cloud after doing absolutely nothing. They didn't even progress. There is nothing but bad stories from behind the scenes about how you always demand control and influence and you want to make roster changes. Don't know why Fallen would be up for that, given he's one of the fucking smartest people in fucking esports.
Well, I don't know why this is where I think Peacemaker lacks self-awareness. Because
he's out of his god.
When we get to the Fallen point, like the basic gist of my thoughts on it is like I don't think Fallen actually was telling the truth or ever for 1 second considered Peacemaker. I think he thought to himself, I'm already going to announce this other guy who's not Brazilian. So you know what? Just give props to a fellow Brazilian guy. And since I'm not going to hire him anyway, fuck it, just give him a little bit of shine so someone else might think he's decent. You know?
Yeah, of course it is.
That you can almost get away with that. Like I don't believe it for a second, but let's say you vaguely accept the premise. Why is then Peacemaker rocking up like? So if I'm being honest, I did feel like the job was probably like, he's so you stupid idiot. Just let him say that shit. Take it all with a smile and go.
What's wrong with this guy? What is wrong with this guy? I don't get it. It's like you say, right? Here's clearly what happened, right? At no point was Peacemaker considered for the job. I'm pretty sure their first choice will have been Zeus. And I'm pretty sure
Fallen even said in an interview, I think it was about a month ago. So when they'd already said in a previous interview that they were considering getting a coach, because obviously it's a good way to make fans not scared that you're having all these bad results and you haven't integrated the new players. Saying I'll get a coach is a good way to put it off. But they'd sort of promised they would. Then Fallen made a really bizarre statement in an interview where he was like, I don't even think a coach is our main problem. Like I don't think that's a big deal, basically. So if he's saying all that, there's no way he's then behind the scenes like, but on second thoughts, Peacemaker. And then they're going, oh, big dog. You picked the wrong bloody time. We could have had him any other time, but you won't believe this. He's eating this bad kebab. I mean, possibly had his lungs rupture or something. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, it's now been downgraded to a hurt tummy and he's been sent home with some Flintstones vitamins. So unfortunately, he's on bed rest for a while and not available, I'm afraid. Oh, bloody hell. Right, is that fucking Serbian guy? I can't even understand who makes me resident sleeper available. Like, come on. There's no way. Peacemaker probably thinks it sounds reasonable. Yeah, why not?
Like, mate. It's just beyond a fucking joke. Again, it's like, honestly, right? It's
like they're trying to troll us because they know that we've mocked him so much.
Like, no, I know. I just, honestly, mate, like, as a rule, I think people should stay away from Twitlonger in esports. It seems to be whenever a Twitlonger comes out, it's always a fucking embarrassment, right? But certainly, if you're
they always go like, you know what? Let me sort this out and get it all out in the open for once. And then all they do is like But actually, while I'm at it, why don't I admit all the stuff where I did stuff wrong? But no one will probably pick up on that. And then all you do is just, if you know anything about esports, you read it and you go, I now have about 15 new questions. And I also think you're more of a cunt.
Yeah, it very rarely works out for you when you take to Twit longer. And it's just like, this is just a window into a mind of a massive egotist. And it's an unjustified egotistical stance. Like, you know, if you'd had nothing... Okay, if you're a musician and you have nothing but hits, right?
Yes.
You know, there probably comes a point where you get to just say things in very grandiose terms, and people might not like it, but, you know, you can justify it. You can say, like, oh, my next album's going to be fucking straight fire. It's going to be another platinum one.
Oh, by the way, like, obviously, yeah, that's one of the reasons, by the way, why I always give a lot of leeway to people who are, like, great artists or whatever, you know, because, yeah, the problem they have is they're so in love with what they're doing that they think every piece they did was, like, the best piece or whatever, you know, and so they definitely go way too far down that road.
Yeah, of course they do. But it's understandable. Yeah, exactly. This is what I mean. It's like, if everything you do is good... you can be forgiven for or rather, if everything you do, the worst you ever do is good, you can be forgiven, I think, for thinking everything you do is actually great. I think that's forgivable. But if you've just failed time and time and time again, it's mad. It's mad. It's like, do you know who it reminds me of? To give you an analogy from football, Sam Allardyce.
Okay.
Peacemaker is Sam Allardyce. Now, my thoughts
Not
about
as
Sam
good as
Allardyce...
he thinks he is.
No, my thoughts about Sam Allardyce are this. I think he's an absolute he's just human garbage. He literally just is garbage in human form. I've never really seen anything like it before. He is one of the most fucking... Like, he just lacks self-awareness. I mean, first of all, you know, he had that, like, ill-fated reign... where he was England manager for like one game or something.
That's mental, isn't it?
And then got caught on fucking record, basically setting up some fucking like dubious meetings so people could get agents could get bribed. And he basically honestly believed that he was made some sort of scapegoat for that, when in actual fact...
Love that as well.
Yeah, the fact that Sam Allardyce has always been so fucking pally with the media has always basically meant he'll get a better shake. He's one of those managers, like Roy Hodgson's the same. You know, these are managers that, because they'll always talk to journalists, they'll always get like a good shake. And Sam Allardyce famously came back to that after having a huff when he was in another documentary about corrupt agencies and bungs, which Alex Ferguson's son was in, which is why Alex Ferguson famously didn't speak to the BBC. But anyway... I remember there was this interview quote where Sam Allardyce said, "If I was manager of Real Madrid, I'd win you a trophy every season." And he always tried to style it out like it was a joke, but the motherfucker meant it. He honestly thinks he's a good manager. Yeah, he honestly thinks he's a good manager. And if you've ever had to watch, like... What did he do? He had a spell at Bolton where he realised that you could win games by being really good at set pieces and kicking teams in the shins that actually played football, which is why he used to have Arsenal on toast for 6 points every fucking season. You know, he just realised that. And then, like, you know, if you saw the players that he... By the way, if you've ever played Football Manager... You might do this thing where you just pick up like free transfers for the lols. Like, you might just see like, oh, look at that player. Look at that player's stats and he's free. Or look at that name. I know him and I'll bring him in. And you bring him in on, because in previous versions of Football Manager, there were just sort of no penalties. You could just offer massive salaries on free transfers.
You had
bring
a massive
him in.
roster.
Yeah. Just get a massive roster. And, you know, if you throw enough shit at a wall, it sticks. No manager running a real football club would ever think like that. Only two managers have. One was Barry Fry, and the other was Sam Allardyce, who just did it. I remember when he brought in fucking Jardel, right? The legendary fucking Brazilian striker who fucking racked up goals for fun in the Portuguese league. And he brought Jardel on a free transfer. He'd been out of, he hadn't played for Porto for a while. And they brought him in, and he turned up, mate, and he was bigger than me now. He was unreal. Like, there's a picture of him with a Bolton Football Club stretched. You can see his tits. It's disgusting. And Sam Allardyce had to put him on an Atkins diet. And he sat, it's like, you're a fucking joke. You're a fucking joke. And he was like, yeah, he turned up a little bit out of shape. Understatement of the fucking year. We put him on that Atkins lad, and that was it. Like, he's like... This is Peacemaker. Like, this is fucking Peacemaker. It's a fucking joke.
Oh, he also, here's the other thing about him, right? He has had way too many contentious partings. It's one thing, by the way, if they just fire you because they don't want you, or you get pushed out because you made an ultimatum. That's one thing. You know, I've known very talented people who are great people who, I mean, there's many examples who a great one would be Shocks. Undeniably amazingly talented person, has certain aspects to his personality where he will inevitably butt heads with people, and he often ends up getting kicked. But that doesn't always mean he's in the wrong, and it doesn't always mean that everyone has to have like animosity towards him long term. But the weirdest thing about Peacemaker is he has also fired so many fucking shots at, like, first of all, us for criticising him, but teams that he's been on as well, and like implied in interviews that they didn't give him what he wanted. And not like, he reminds me of those fuckers that they always have on like the first few rounds of like Britain's Got Talent or whatever. You know, the cunts who come on who've clearly just spent their whole life singing karaoke to a bunch of people who are about 6 sheets to the wind, and they're all going, "No, you're fucking brilliant." Like the audio is just dog shit in this little pub, and they're just like, it's one of those karaoke's where they even play the actual like full music behind you singing, so like you can't even tell if someone's shit for obvious reasons, because they don't want you to just fall flat on your face in that scenario. Then they go and they sing, and then, you know, like the judges don't give a fuck. They have to say like 300 people, so they just go, "You're terrible and you'll never make it." And you know, when they do that thing where they go like, "You don't know anything about music, you'll regret this one day, I'll be bigger than you." They'll, like, they always turn to some like fucker like Will I Am, who's just ball out of control, like, "I'll be bigger than you ever will be. You're jealous of my talent." It's like, when they do that, it's like, I already sort of was repulsed by your lack of talent, but now I actively despise you and wish nothing but the worst for you as a person, even though I only met you for 5 minutes.
It's one thing to not be very good but be a trier, but to not be good and be delusional that you are good is the unforgivable combo, isn't it? But anyway, so he ends his twit longer by saying, "During these last 4 months, I did receive some potential interests and proposals, but I didn't feel it was the right moment to go back. Working with CS is definitely my biggest passion in life, and this period away made me rethink a lot about all the knowledge I gained during these years, all the Brazilian, American, European, and Asian scenes. It was amazing experiences and with a lot of information that I couldn't find time to administer."
So he's done the entire fucking world. Like, he's just waiting for Antarctica, and he's just completed the continent.
Yeah, he has. He's got it, mate. He needs to go out to Australia, and he's fucking living the dream.
Anyway, anytime in a throwaway manner you just list off all the continents of the world as your past jobs.
Yeah, I know. It's like, you know, I've gained some insight into everything, the entire expanse of human knowledge. Yeah, it's fucked up, man. But anyway, and he says, I want to come back, and I'm hoping to see you all in the near future. So. Look, I think at this point, what I would do if I was Peacemaker, and I think what would be best for him, would be to go to one of these, like, you know, I know, maybe one of these up and coming Brazilian teams. You know, they're out there that you see. You know, for example, you've got this new Santos team, I think that got announced recently. You know, and it's got Showtime on it and Bid, and, you know, a couple of, you know, a guy called Del Boni. And I like him. He's got a really high head, a lot of forehead space. You know, that's where you go now. Do it again. Go back to your roots. Take a Brazilian team that's got some potential and turn it into something better than what it was when you got there. Show people you've still got the fucking Midas touch, right? That's what you have to do. Sitting around waiting for the phone to ring from a top team now when your name is Peacemaker is fucking madness. It is madness.
You know, by the way, that's also the ultimate sign that someone's delusional. Like, I won't call out any specific players on this, but there've been so many, like publicly and privately, where I've heard this, where it's like, you know, the players who were in those teams where they've been allowed to stay for way too long. Like, the real reason they're staying is because either they were a legend and they really did help the team at one point in time, so people are like, you know, give them a bit more rope, or they were just such a great teammate that people really are like, I just don't want to have to kick him, you know, like, can we not just give him a little bit more time, you know, let's get his confidence up. Those players, right, you would think would be the ones who'd get what the situation was. And when they finally leave the team would be like, thanks, guys. Like, I appreciate you waiting until the end. You know, obviously, my career, I'm going to have to start from the bottom again. And if you want to continue as a player, at that point, what you say is, but I'm willing to, you know, I'm willing to go to another team, to grind, work my way back up. And if I get a second shot at the top scene, I'd love nothing more. No, what these players do, the ones who've been living on mad borrowed time and like all these external factors that have nothing to do with their game now, is they are the ones who will say comments either privately to me or in interviews that are like, I definitely would join another team. It'd have to be a very good team, though. You know, like a team with championship aspirations. You're going like, what the fuck are you talking? Why would they sign you? Your own team that had every reason to keep you has basically just said, like, can't just keep injecting myself with poison every morning, can I? You know, like, got to get rid of this arm, haven't I? Cut it off. It's got gangrene.
It's like I say, at this point, just be grateful that people would still call you and offer you a job, right? You know what I mean? Like, okay, imagine it in any other... imagine it in any other world, right? Like just any other esports world. Sorry, you know, like say commentators. If you had like a string of series where you were, or like events where you were utterly terrible, and you didn't turn up on time, and you commentate the game, and you were sat there, and you like you didn't get the major, you wouldn't put out a statement going, well. Yeah, I'm waiting for the call. I'm sure I'll get the next. No, like you got to look at your fucking self. If you were a journalist and you put out 5 stories in a row and they were all fucking wrong, you wouldn't have it. You know what I mean? It's madness to me. I've said this. I saw this in League of Legends. Actually, there was a period of time where coaches could just be like demonstrably dog shit, and their teams could just fail, and that was it. And nobody would say anything about it. And because they were like ex-players and were clearly mates with everybody, they just got kept on. And it was like, hang on a fucking minute. You know, or they got another opportunity with another one of their old mates. It's like, come on. We don't need cronyism in fucking CS.
No, right? Dude, and by the way, that used to trigger the fuck out of me because another thing you will absolutely be able to relate to is I have no problem whatsoever, by the way, with... pro players coming and doing my job, because obviously technically my job as an analyst is absolutely tailored for pro players. I always go the other way on that one. I always tell people, think about what a fucking incredibly blessed career I've had, that I've literally been one of the big name analysts as the only non-ex-pro, basically, except for when you've done it. That's about the only other person who had any credible big tournaments who wasn't an ex-pro. Every other one of them is like 10 times more experienced at exactly that particular job. Like, you know, they have all the quality. So I look at it as like, wow, I've been so fucking lucky. But one thing that does trigger the fuck out of me is there are so many pro players who think that like, I could do your job better. And it's like, they don't even realize that the first 3 months, they're just living on their rep as a player. Like you haven't even been judged yet, dude. Like no one's even shitting on you. That like, let's see you in 2 years when people actually just know you as an analyst, you know.
Yeah. And trust me, I'll tell you from somebody who's worked as fucking broadcasting a long time, that novelty factor that gets you through the first 3 months, where you can be mediocre and subpar and still see 10 Reddit threads saying, oh, you're the best thing ever just because you're a new face.
There used to be a joke in League of Legends, but the reason it became a joke is because it wasn't a joke initially. That every person, because you know in League of Legends, they were so fucking cynical. They used to just bring the pro players on the analysis desk who weren't playing that game, pay them nothing and just have them do analysis for free. What a lovely company that is. So anyway, when they would do this, the famous meme that emerged from it was, always there would be a mad upvoted comment like, this guy's fucking great. He should be on the analyst desk more. It's like, that's because you've seen him once. You haven't had to see him 700 times and learn that, like people get triggered that I say, like, and here's the thing or whatever. Like, yeah, because you've heard me talk for like 10,000 hours, you daft cunt. I can't just come up with new ways to speak all the time, can I?
Yeah, it's insane. Look, we can move on to the next part. Like, I suppose
well, here's the thing. Isn't there something we could tie into this, though, Rich?
Yeah, there was. Are we thinking about the thing we were thinking about?
Well, you were talking about people who were talent and whatnot.
Yeah, so I did want to talk about this. Obviously, there was a story today which got me thinking about it. There was that James Banks and the FGC thing, where basically, if people didn't see it, because obviously it is ostensibly a Counter-Strike podcast, there was basically James Banks, who we've playfully made some fun of because we know him and we've known him many years. With the whole would you look at that, right? We gave him his. And
to be fair, that's where we never get credit, right? If I'm gonna poke at someone a little bit, I do it publicly. The difference is half the other people who are like, oh, dreadful behind it. They're the ones that are mad fucking vicious behind the scenes. I just get shit out of my system, and I'm cool with everyone.
Exactly, but it serves a double purpose. Like, first of all, it neutralizes it when other people are saying it, and second of all, it also sort of makes you a little bit aware, like, oh yeah, maybe don't say would you look at that all the time. It's not, and it's done in a non-malicious fucking way. That's it. Yes. And it's definitely some feedback you took on board, right? The problem solved. Not that it was a big problem to begin with. But anyway, so there was a story today about like he was doing an FGC event, and basically the FGC talent, the analysts, because they're fucking just morons over there. Because they've never had a high standard of broadcast brought to them.
Yes.
Like, they just think Evo is the shit. They don't really understand how broadcasts are meant to work, and they don't understand that, for example, your hosts do not need to have an intimate knowledge of the game. It's just an alien concept to them,
like,
because everybody
where it's like everyone should only be judged on how much pure knowledge they have of this one fighting game, right?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter what your broadcast experience is, how good, what companies you've worked for. You could have won Emmys. I've been on an Emmy-nominated TV show. No truck with the FGC as a host, because I don't turn up to locals smelling of shit and play and hoping a pro turns up so I can lose to them and go, wow, it was close that time, man. Like that is pretty much the FGC fucking life, isn't it? Like, I mean, let's be real. Unwashed people go into fucking local events, right, hoping somebody with some notoriety and skill turns up, so maybe you get a chance to play them, and just for that small joy in your life, you will tank the entire scene from ever professionalizing and having sponsors and having money. And the talent advocate for this. The talent think this is fucking great. The talent think this is brilliant. Like, even the people that have, because at the end of the day, their jobs are guaranteed. If it stays small and we don't have any competition, I can always be the one that earns. This is brilliant. I really like this arrangement. Okay. Let's keep the pond small so the fish look really fucking big, when really they're all the size of fucking, minnows, right? So anyway, that's the FGC. And then what had transpired was they were willing to make the broadcast shit, these other analysts and everything, that they were basically willing to ask James Banks like questions he couldn't possibly answer on the desk. And he's the host. He shouldn't be answering any questions. And then they kept doing it, and they plotted in a WhatsApp group to basically try and fuck him up and make him look like an idiot. So
and
basically,
by the way, in a way which is unacceptable. Like, here's the thing.
Of course it is.
Absolutely.
Jeopardizing the whole broadcast.
I believe there is absolutely a world in which I personally generally wouldn't do it. Like, I tend to let people, as I said, give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves if they're bad. But if you don't want to work with someone, personally, my approach is I never go and tell someone I don't want to work with that guy. If someone asks me, like a guy, like, what do you think of this person? I'll give them my honest opinion. And even then, I'll try not to bring up any like minor petty shit. It'll be more like, I don't think this is that good or whatever. But one thing I would never do is like actually sabotage the broadcast. That part is unacceptable. Like, the idea of that you actually are saying shit like, let's bait him into saying something wrong. Like, that is unacceptable. Like, you have never seen, it doesn't matter who it is. I've worked on desks with people I did not like, but I have never been like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll set this cunt up to look absolute shit, because we all look shit, then he ruined the show.
Yeah,
what are you there for?
Exactly. So just to even think about why you're doing that to begin with, but like, because it's like you say, it ruins the show. But on top of that, right? If you feel so principled about them hiring a host who doesn't have FGC chops, don't work the event. If you feel that principled about it, say no to the work. Oh, what's that? You don't have any principles. You don't have any backbone.
If you're actually a big name person, that's even a better way to get the person
make
out
the statement, right?
Boycott them, yeah, make them make a choice.
Again, I understand it. I understand that the FGC think you've got to have your own fight stick. They even alluded to this. This is how fucked up and delusional the FGC are still in 2018 with the growth that esports has had. They were joking about James Banks having a fight stick, which of course he doesn't, because he doesn't play. But why does he need to? Why does he need to do that?
Well, that is one thing I've always wondered about as well.
Idiots.
If someone, this is actually a theory I have in life. I'll run it by you quickly, which is that Right, here's the thing. If I tell you about someone I think is fucked up and I really hate them, right, you'll actually get bored with all the legit reasons I'll give you. Like, well, he did this to me and he said this, and then actually he lied about that detail. If you look up this, you'll go like, fucking hell, right, I get it. But what's mad is I've noticed so many people who hate someone online, everything they hit you with immediately are all the lies. And even if that person did something to them that annoyed them, on some level, they sort of get, maybe because this is how their first interaction when they tried to tell someone else, like, oh, it's a piece of shit. When the person's like, but why? Because it's probably some petty reason, like, oh, he dissed me, and they're like, oh, well, he didn't diss me, so I mean, I'm fine with him. What they do, my mechanism that I've come up with is, I think that what they eventually realize is they get some low level of self-awareness that's like, right, other people aren't hating him for the reasons that I do, because it's a really sort of personal reason. So what I've got to do is reverse engineer within the other person that feeling of hatred and bitterness that I have. So the only way I can do that is I've got to say whatever lie would trigger them. So if I say, like, we did this, or, you know what, he actually has been talking shit about you, some lie like that then triggers in them the fear. And then somehow it's like that fucking mad, corrupt cop syndrome of like, well, since I know he's secretly a piece of shit, if I plant the evidence, well, I'm not really doing anything corrupt. I'm just making sure he gets caught. It's like they then sort of like rationalize it in some bizarre way. Whereas I have to say, listen, there's plenty of people I hate for very petty reasons, but I would never literally just manufacture a lie about their career.
No, and look, and I think it's worth pointing out, and Banks is pointing this out as well. He has competed in FGC events. I mean, you're probably not going to find many hosts that are going to host an event that have like the same sort of level of credentials he does. Like, he's achieved placements at UK events and stuff.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, what do you want? And this just shows the inherent absurdity of it. One of the things that people said to me when the FGC were threatening to shoot me on site or beat me up on site, hundreds of comments of this nature, including when the hilarious trick they would do is they would go, oh, you don't know what the FGC is like because you don't go to locals. You should come to a local and then you'll know what the fuck you're talking about. And then I go, okay, I'll go to this local here. And they go, if you turn to that local, we'll kill you. That's what they do. I mean, so to just imagine that. Well, all right, then. Okay, it seems like a really reasonable scene full of normal, healthy human beings. So just imagine it. They talk about how inclusive they are and how fucking they want to, everybody's welcome. And the only reason we did all this terrible stuff to Richard Lewis is because we all know really he's a Nazi and he worked for Breitbart and he chokeslammed a 12-year-old Swedish, player through Hell in the Cell and all this other stuff. We only did it to him. Banks is kind of one of your own, and you did it to him. And you were willing to not just fuck him over and make him look like an idiot and basically bully him, which is what we're talking about here. It was all plotted and planned in a secret WhatsApp group they deliberately excluded him from. He was the only one from the broadcast who wasn't in there because he's not in. You fucking have basically done it to a guy that has these credentials because he's not good enough, because he didn't win. Like, bigger name. It's just ridiculous. It was absurd. So anyway, I mean, nothing to do with what I wanted to talk about, but it got me thinking about another guy that, it's been brought up quite a bit, and that's Mega Man. And we talked about Mega Man. Recently we talked about something that was kind of related to Mega Man, where we were like, if you're ever doing your events for free,
yes,
you probably might want to not ever do that, because that will put a lot of people's noses out of joint, because you cannot ever beat free in the eyes of a company, and it skews the market, and you've got to lower all the prices, and generally talent won't forgive you for that. And I saw a thread where he was doing it. Now, obviously, I don't know if he caught the show that week or whatever. I'm sure it would have given him pause for thought, and I know he does watch. But I'll say this. It is fucking weird, right? It is weird that he hasn't been given like another chance by now. Like, he does seem to be in the fucking naughty corner, and I am at a loss as to why it is.
If you're willing to do it for free, and then the person still goes, I'm all right, that probably suggests there's something going around that is serious.
Yeah. Well, look, I've definitely heard rumors, and I'm not going to peddle and traffic in rumors on the show, but I'll certainly say as well, I know there was a period of time where some of his co-casters certainly felt that he was difficult to work with, I think that's fair. I heard
to say there was some pretty unprofessional incidents.
Yeah, and I think he said some stuff on broadcast, which I think kind of.
There's another thing. Yeah, that bothers people. People don't want to be associated on a cast where someone says some stupid shit, because the best example ever. Okay, even though this is going to sound weird because Dust himself did say some stuff. To this day, people say to Dust, "You're les noobs." It's like, he didn't say that. That wasn't him. What's mad is the actual. No, it was the fucking. Vansilli. Vansilli was the one who said it first, but Smiths took it. Yes, but the problem with that is, even though actually, basically, Dust did something as bad and deservedly got some harsh kickback. What's mad is the ultimate kicker line wasn't even him. So if I was him, I'd be a bit mad at the Vansilli guy. Like, what the fuck? Why I got all the blame for this? So that's why people are really wary of you saying dodgy stuff. That's actually how you know in a mad way. I mean, I guess you can't as a public person, but behind the scenes, I am obviously somewhat of a cool guy, because it'd be so easy for all these casters to just band together and be like, get this guy the fuck off. Or, you know what? We don't like it when he sometimes goes a bit too close to the edge and then we're associated. Or if we don't say something, people think we're backing up what he's done. That's never
happened. You did make that joke tweet that one time where you were like, "Oh, we're having our annual meeting to keep Mega Man out of the industry," and I know a lot of people got upset about that. Yes. And that wasn't. There's obviously no truth to that whatsoever.
No, that's the whole point. That was the joke,
and that was the point of the tweet. Yeah.
Yes. It would be like if someone who was a really high level politician was like, right, just off to the Bilderberger meeting now to decide all you fucking plebs' future. That'd be the joke, wouldn't it? And you wouldn't be like, oh, he's bloody admitted it. It's like, come on. Yeah.
No, I mean, look. So here's the thing I wanted to discuss in regards to this was just that. I seem to remember there was some fucking, I can't even remember what it was. There was some line anyway that I think put everyone on edge during a broadcast one time. Made some joke.
I can tell you if you want. I think I remember.
Was it you got beat like a 12-year-old girl or something?
He said something like, they got mollywopped like a 14-year-old girl. And I believe mollywop is when someone straight pimp slaps someone or something, which is just that might have just been unfortunate wording, but no one wants to be associated with that.
Yeah, and well, obviously, and I think there was this.
I mean, to be fair, Richard, there was actually a cast where a totally different caster, who again I won't reference, did do something mental, just going, they're being slaughtered World War II. It's
no, it was actually they're being slaughtered in the African colonies, the Belgians. It was unreal.
That's and it's too specific as well. Cool.
Yeah, no, I know, right? Here's the thing I'll say about this. There was a period of time, I think, where Mega Man was kind of doing these late night broadcasts by himself. He was also known as being a hothead in ESEA, which, let me tell you, in the same way that every time my work's discussed, it's just people going, and he blocked me on Twitter. They only ever talk about that. They never talk about the work or, the value of the work or anything else. Just, he blocked me on Twitter. It was the same with Mega Man. Every time Mega Man was being discussed, it was never, oh, that was a good cast, that was this. It was always, yeah, and he fucking, did you see that video of him raging in that ESEA pug, and he banned that guy because he had admin rights at one time and he accused him of cheating and all this. And it's listen, if you've never fucking raged at Counter-Strike, you don't have the game installed, mate. You're full of shit. That game, again, I did a podcast the other day where a Buddhist monk got triggered by people giving bad Yelp reviews about going to a monastery. They went to the monastery and we went to the monastery this winter and it was really, really cold, and this Buddhist monk just snapped, it's fucking middle of winter and it's a fucking monastery. What do you expect, you mad cunt? He fucking lost his mind. And obviously, if you ever played fucking Counter-Strike, that game will make you lose your fucking mind. It will make you lose your fucking mind. All right? End of story. So obviously, Mega Man's lost his mind because he's played the game. It happens, right? So he already had a reputation because of that, and people were banging on him for doing. And I think what he wanted to do was kind of endear himself to the community. So he thought, we'll go down the edgy route. We'll I'll be like the edgy caster. And I think that was great when you're doing late night casts by yourself. Me and Sam have done it, and I've done some silver casts like Moses, where, we have a few beers and we watch silvers play games and we bang on them, and it's fucking funny, right? But contextually it makes sense. You then can't take that persona into a duo at an event where you're both being paid and it's not a regular commentary partner, and you're throwing in all these lines about fucking 14-year-old girls getting slapped and stuff, and your commentators are like, what the fuck is this? I don't stand by these comments. And it's really hard, by the way, when someone, for anybody that doesn't know this, when you're working a broadcast, if somebody says something on the broadcast that is clearly over the line or over the limits or over the threshold, it does affect all of you. Like, you can't, and there's no way that makes sense on a broadcast where you can sort of disassociate yourself with what that person says. You can't do it. You know, like if somebody says something absolutely ridiculous and you turn around and you can't just go in the middle of the show, oh, that's absolutely ridiculous, mate. So you got to try and get them to break or whatever and just hope nobody notices it. So it is difficult. And I think that's what happened. And I think as a result of that, I think it was like, you know, people were a little bit antsy about hiring him. But it has been how many fucking years?
It's going to be like 3 or something at least, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even 4.
And listen, I'll say this. If anyone's ever learnt the lesson, come on, 3 fucking years is, you know what I mean? Like, he is, I'll say this, like, he's a talented guy. He's got potential. And, you know, I at this stage, I think, you know, your penance has been fucking paid. Like, he definitely deserves another shot at an event. You know, we're always talking about freshening stuff up, right? And let's bring in some new blood and blah blah blah. Well, now's your opportunity. I don't understand. Like, we've got this culture now where it's like if you fuck up, you're out forever. You're in the cold forever. It's like the fucking Inuit people. You know how they used to say that when the elderly got infirm, they would just literally push them out in the fucking snow and just leave them to it. Because they were a burden to everyone else and resources were scarce. Like, you can't be doing that in fucking esports with everyone. So I'd like to see him get another chance. And it's like, I when I saw him saying, like, please, I'll do your event for free. Someone give the guy a fucking shot, like. You know? I don't know if you agree with that or disagree.
Like, I do really, like, here's the thing. I'm not connected with all the casters. Like, if, like, people who work at events, I don't ask them, like, what was going on with that? Was there any problems? You know, unless something gets to me, it doesn't get to me. That's why, if you remember when we did the episode talking about McMahon, I said, I don't actually particularly know why. I've heard some vague things about unprofessionalism.
Yeah, and again, assuming there is not a reason I'm not aware of.
Sure.
You know. Then fine. But I'm just saying, in principle, if it was that he made all these mistakes and said these edgy things...
I would agree. If it was many years ago, give the guy a chance now. And then, by the way, if they fuck up, yes, absolutely consign them to the good dustbin of life. But if they turn out to be okay, you give them another chance. And it's like a probation thing, you know, then they keep going. I will say this, though, to Mega Man. Like, maybe because you're at the end of your rope, but you tried everything else and it hasn't worked. You thought, right... just come out publicly, do this, get it on Reddit. That'll be leverage, right? If that's your last option, okay, maybe you do that on the way out. But if that wasn't your last option, if you had the chance to go to everyone who might be upset with you, ask them what's going on, maybe apologize, tell them I've learned.
Sure.
Like, if you're doing the move that basically is what pro players can do because they're pro players and that's what keeps them relevant, where they just instantly leverage social media and Reddit against anyone they want to leverage against. People fucking despise that behavior. Like, that should be the last resort that you go with. If you do that and then think that guy's going to then be like, oh, yeah, I guess we've been... It's like, you have now made an enemy for life. If that, especially, and again, I don't know the exact particulars on this one, but if it turns out that you are in any way being disingenuous, like you're now trying to use the public to seem like you're a great guy, and this guy actually, you did do something a bit fucked up to them or say something fucked up, and they know that, they're going to now be doubly against you when you are absolutely fucked with those people. So even if before they didn't have some sort of like cartel, some people are just going to be like, you know what, fuck that guy forever, actually. He doesn't even admit what he did or whatever.
Yeah, and
again, it's a very tricky path to go down, that is.
Yeah, and in general, you know, like I've said it before, I'm always against, you know, any group locking arms to keep out somebody else, you know, getting an opportunity on merit. And we've been very fortunate in the CS scene that, you know, people don't really do that. But equally, you know, on the other side of the argument, I think if somebody had done something that was like unbelievably fucking heinous, then it would be warranted, right? You would have to show your principles. And I think we've generally been very good in CS. Like, for example, you know, when ESL said they weren't going to have you at majors and not hire you for events, and I was like, well, I'm not going to work ESL events. I'm not going to do it. You did it for Yanko at the major. You know, Yanko should have been there. He wasn't. You said he better be there next time, or I'm not going to be there next time. And I think in general, we've all had each other's back mostly. And, you know, I don't know, like, me and Mega Man have actually never been in the same room.
Like, I will say this.
So
if you
it's hard for me to gauge, but he doesn't seem, like, certainly now, he seems like somebody that just wants to have a shot again, you know?
Okay, but that's one thing you do have to wonder about as an outsider. If everyone either is against
it everyone?
or just won't speak up, or just won't say anything, that does that. Like, just as an outsider who doesn't know, that does make me start to wonder what's going on there. Because that's the thing. There's plenty of people I think are arseholes in the esports industry. But you know what? I could go find 10 people who are credible who'd go, nah, I like him actually. No, what are you on about? He's never good enough to me. I could find those people. Where are those people for Mega Man? Where are the people coming out? Where's the fake fallen fuck who's like, get us a little bit of shine? You know what, Mega Man? I'd love to work with you, but it's the bloody others, isn't it? Like, where's that guy? It's not even a fallen type dude.
Sure, but I think the situation's compounded, isn't it? Because he didn't get hired. He didn't get to work with people to build relationships, to have the people that would come out and go, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. And it's like, you know, there's people in different types of purgatory. You know, Vince was on the fucking sidelines for a long time before people went to bat for Vince. You know, I was out there. I think you too. We were saying, you know, Vince is fucking good enough. Pick him up. Like, this guy can do it. And, you know, there probably wasn't a lot of people going to bat for him because they didn't know what he was about. And now they do. And obviously everyone's like, yeah, Vince should be going to more and more, you know, events. We can segue through into another general point, and then there's like one other topic, and then I guess we can wrap up the show. But there was this thing that DK reported, and I think you made a tweet about it because, of course, you did. And it was about the major and the talent that's going to be there, and apparently, Face It were considering using like some people who had won a community competition or something. Now, it's not confirmed yet, but again, we know DK's reliable on these things. And, you know, it is getting close to the major, and obviously I don't think the talent pool's been announced yet.
Oh, here's something. You know what? I'm not doing the major. Like, they have never contacted me. Face It actually has no relationship with me going back years. I've only done one of the ECS seasons, and that was one where they had issues with a different person and basically just hired me to spite that person or to be like, put a bit of pressure on them next time. So I have no relationship with it. So it's already a done deal. I knew the second that Face It was announced as the major host that I wasn't going to be doing a major in my own country. So I made my peace with that a long time ago, mate. Now, again, in line with ESL, as I've often said, they did me a nice little favour by then fucking up about 15 times and then lying about it and being arseholes about it. That definitely gave me a little bit of fun to have with the situation where I knew I wasn't getting hired anyway. Like, it wasn't making that video or saying any of that shit that I thought, oh, bloody done it now, haven't I? I was never getting hired. So I can say this. Based on the things I've heard, first of all, there won't be some top talent at the event. And everyone who's thinking, what, you shouldn't even be at... No, I'm talking about the people you actually like. I'm talking about the best in the world. Some of those people won't be at the event. Secondly, part of the issue and why you haven't seen a talent announcement less than 1 month before the event is because people are still doing mad protracted negotiations because these fuckers not only are trying to use, like, potentially fucking people like that, like no names, but to save money. Because remember, the thing about a major now, Rich, that no one stops and thinks about is, why do you think that people like me complain about the major being 3 weeks instead of 2 weeks, an extra week, and that used to be the qualifier? Well, here's the thing. As an analyst, you should never complain. You get paid by day rate. You're loving it when the event's longer. Well, here's the problem. If you want to hire all the best talent in the world, you have to pay them their day rate. By the way, the biggest event in the world, you have to pay them their top rate every day of the event. Well, what if I told you that what's coming back to me is that they're even trying to be like, well, we'll hire you, but maybe for only some of the weeks. This is the sort of behavior where you're getting into the territory of like, should you even be hosting a major if you're doing this? Like, don't go and get the fucking Super Bowl and then go, well, I've got the Super Bowl, so let's just cheap out on everything. Shall I get a shit stadium? And like, don't, you know what, get volunteers to do all this stuff. Like, come on, man.
Well, look, I remember E-League, we took a lot of heat for not hiring more talent, right? And there was a perception that we did it to save money, you know. Like there was budgetary constraints. I certainly don't think that was true. I think we just wanted to do it the way we did it. I don't think money was a consideration, but I'd be inclined to agree with the criticism, which was we probably should have had more talent there.
The other issue, though, is like that one was just they didn't hire certain people. But the maddest detail, and so E-League didn't even have certain history with people. The maddest detail about the Faceit one is from everything I'm seeing and hearing, it sounds like every person having issues with them. It's all due to, like, you're going to love this, Richard. As far as I can tell, Faceit, remember, one of the companies who was against ESL doing all the exclusivity, those evil bastards in 2015. We're like you guys, the community. We want to come up and, let's battle the evil ESEA. They are literally like the end of fucking the Diablo 1 game where the main character beats the devil and becomes the devil himself. They are ESL in 2015, Rich. They are doing all of this based on settling petty personal conflict scores. Again, not talking about myself here, although they're doing that well with me. From years ago, because they're like, we've got the cosh now, haven't we? So you're all going to bow and take your fucking beating. And that is something I thought we were past in fucking CSGO. I thought that was like 3 years ago.
Thought we were past it in esports in general, but obviously not. I mean, it's like, how big does the industry have to get before people realize, like, we can all earn a crust, we can all eat, we can all live.
Also such a short-sighted, like, here's the best example ever. So people already know I'm alluding to when ESL did this to me. They constantly wouldn't hire me for majors for petty personal reasons because certain people in their company just had a personal beef with me. Okay, so they wouldn't do it. Now, first of all, they got criticised, not to a max degree, but, at times they got some criticism for it. This is the mad thing. One of the reasons they did that is because at the time, ESL had a very different philosophy and probably naively thought, right, well, as a company, I mean, remember, ESL TV was one of the first ever actual streaming platform, like aspect, what wasn't a platform, but, proper streaming things for events. Like they built up a whole studio. And so as a result, they, to some degree, did help build some of the first big names in esports casting. So I think naively in 2015, years later, they actually thought to themselves, we make the talent. So you know what, if you fuck with us, what we'll do is we'll exclude you, and in the meantime we'll bring people through who are our people, and we brought them up, and because they're our people, they'll know that which way their bread's buttered, and they owe it all to us. And eventually, did talent really matter that much? People just watch the games and you just waffle in between before the ads, right? And what they had to learn was everything I just said there after the part about not hiring me was wrong. They were actually wrong, because you know why? They hire me to this day. It works great that they do. They hire all the top talent now. You notice they really changed their philosophy. They've changed how they do PR. They've gotten a lot of the personal pettiness and animosity out of the company, either directly or people have actually let it go. And as a result, ESL, if you notice, gets name-checked by every talent and fucking player as like the best tournament organizer now, or one of the best, or people love the way they do it. What Faceit hasn't realised here is you can save money. You can save money this one time and hire a no-name, or you can fuck with the guy who's the top talent and wreck him in that way. But what you will do in the future is, first of all, make an enemy. And secondly, that will never be a long-term strategy. Like whoever you're hiring as a random community caster, let's say one of them makes it. By the way, that would be a miracle. 2 or 3 of them aren't going to. And you know what? That guy who you've made take a hit now, you better hope he's not the best caster in 2 years from now, or he'll be going, I'll get it all back then, shall I? So the last thing you want to do is go to war in these scenarios. Again, as I always stress, we are all part of the same fucking show. It's like in the WWE, it ain't good if one person's trying to hold it over Vince McMahon, like, I need more money or I'm not going out. Like, that's going to ruin the whole show for everyone.
Yeah. And like I say, look, to the point on the no names thing, like I have no issue with, talent being brought through. Right? And I made this point, I think it was on the last show we did, and I'll repeat it. Now, when we did Columbus, we were out there for one of the minors, I think, as well, because Sevo were doing the minors, right? And it was at the same place, if I remember rightly. Feels like another lifetime. But, I said, like, it's kind of fucked up that we get here, and all of a sudden, guys like Launders, who've been grinding your season out, doing the minor, they just get no shine now. They just get told, like, fuck it, the A-list is here and you're on the sidelines. And I said, like, why can't they at least do some group stage games at the major? Why not, right? Why can't we include them? And I did the same for Blue. It was like he was on the desk at Sevo, why don't we use him just once or twice just so he's part of the show, right? Like, as an appreciation thing. So I am for this idea of progressing talent through if it contextually makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is you have some people who win a competition. If I'm being told, if what's been said is correct, you have people who win a community competition and they are going to do a major immediately.
And by the way, that's not the sort of thing
the fuck is that?
You don't report a story like that lightly. Like, if I had to speculate, knowing a little bit about that, like, I obviously wasn't involved with that particular story going to DK, but knowing a little bit about that scenario and where people's heads are at, and then being an industry insider, this would be the between the lines read on that. That is a real thing that other casters or talent knew about, and they heard about it, and enough of them heard about it in a way that it seemed viable, which then fit as the other jigsaw piece of their own situation, that they then gave the information as an expert opinion to DK, and DK's reported it. I don't, like, because I believe, I'm not certain, like, off the top of my head, I think Bardolph or someone made a post that was like, this isn't accurate or whatever. But it's like, that's not good enough, mate, to just say it ain't accurate. Like, if it's absolutely fabricated, go ahead and call him a liar. Say it's all wrong. It's all absolutely incorrect. This is a lie. Don't just say, like, that's not true or whatever. Like, in this scenario, either there's some grain of truth to it, like it was at least floated as an idea. And by the way, even fucking stupid Riot is clever enough to know that when you get caught in something like this, you just do the old thing of like, you guys are right, we were thinking about it, but actually we'd already started to change our minds anyway. And you know what? We see what your point is.
Yeah, you pushed us the rest of the way. Yeah.
That's again the cynical but clever way to do it. Like that part of the story really stank to me.
Yeah, and look, so just to end on this point, it's not that I don't want these guys to get some shine. Apparently, they did like the UK challenge as well and stuff, and it's like I respect that fucking hustle, but again, if it's about saving money, if we think about things as like a fucking food chain, and again, like it's got a hierarchy, a pyramid, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And there's people at the top, and then some people are going to naturally discount themselves. You know, like say, I'm never going to work a CS event again unless it's one that my company runs. I am out of the running. You don't need to worry. Machine gets every gig now, so he doesn't need to make passive aggressive tweets about how it sucks that that he doesn't get to do the majors when he had all of the majors for a while. It's fine. You can do that and fuck over your fellow talent that way. And Red Eye's doing the international. And you know what I mean? Like, and there's going to be some commentators that are going to start dropping off and doing less events. And guys like yourself who've said, I'm going to do less events because, it's a fucking grind. It's a drag. There's no need. I got my fucking YouTube channel and all this other stuff to work on. So naturally other people are going to come through. But the people doing the UK challenge, and sorry, I'm not being disrespectful by saying I don't know your name. I legitimately don't know who we're actually talking about here, whoever it may be. But I'm going to tell you there's a fucking long list of people that are certainly in the pecking order before them. and would definitely do a major on the cheap just to finally get one under their belts.
That's also, by the way, something else
seems
I
crazy
worry
to
about.
me.
That's why I brought up the aspect of like, maybe you're not going to do all the weeks. Because the other part that I worry about this, and this is where I actually do start to feel like I worry that Valve don't oversee anything. I don't want them to go as far as Dota where they're too hands-on. But one area that I worry about is the major is absolutely the most wide open tournament in all of esports that I'm aware of that organizations can abuse the casters. They could actually, in theory, make some of these casters, because every caster I know, even the best in the world, have a mad scarcity mindset and think like, fuck, if I miss one event, people start to forget about me, or maybe then people see they don't need me, or then maybe the event's like, oh, next time I'll hire you, but for a bit. And so as a result, I've heard stories of people doing giant events who are tier one, like best in the world at their job, and doing it for less than their day rate. And the reason they did it is because they actually had leveraged against them. Well, you don't want to miss this massive event, do you? And so, as mad as it sounds, because from the outside, everyone watching assumes everyone just gets paid the max rate for every event. And it's a major, so of course you get extra for that. It's like, you don't always, mate. There's like, that's where in our industry, as with players, people who are young and naive and don't have agents can easily get fucked over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not saying that's happening here. I don't know, but it's something I'm concerned about, definitely.
So yeah, I guess we'll find out more about that over the next few days. I'm inclined to believe James if he says it's not true and it's not accurate, and it might be something.
I think he said that. I'm not 100% sure. But
if it is James, obviously, I trust James. Got a lot of love for him. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. So look, the final thing to wrap up the show. There was a roster swap. It was one that was kind of happened. I don't know, like almost 2 weeks ago, but we haven't done a show to talk about it, so we might as well talk about it. And it's not that spectacular, but it's something that I'm sure you'll be interested in talking about because it's Danish Counter-Strike. And it's Nico with a K, but the little K and the little N. So the not superstar Nico from FaZe going to North from Heroic, and Mertz, who was benched from North, going back in that opposite direction to Heroic.
And it's technically like a 3-month loan or something, I believe they said.
Yeah, it's...
but the implication, I think, is like, if it works out, it's just a move, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, I thought I'd get your, thoughts on this, because I know North is a team that you certainly follow. Yeah. I like Nico. I think he's a good player. I like what he did at Heroic. I definitely think Heroic are in this weird mode right now where they're constantly just cycling out good players for weaker parts. It just feels like every time they make a roster move now, I hope they're getting money because they seem generally to be getting a downgrade in talent. But I'll say this, and I'll repeat my point about Mertz. I know that you weren't a fan of Mertz and didn't think he did enough. I actually think Mertz was a pretty good find. I think he performed well. I think Mertz got absolutely fucked over by North, and I don't think it's a talent thing. I think it's a culture thing or a personality thing. It was something along those lines, because I definitely don't think Mertz deserved to be cut. Again, especially so quick into a career, think about all the time that AZ had to get back to form. Years. Think about, some of the stuff Kjaerbye's done. This is a team that literally has been carried by AZ's resurgence in form and the fact Valde's an absolute fucking god.
Yes.
That's been pretty much what's been going on. And I think Mertz definitely played a part. Like, in there, he was a player that was, at least for me, outperforming expectations that you would have from a rookie player joining a big team, using the AWP. But certainly he seemed to have very short shrift in terms of North. Now, him going to Heroic, I don't think that's going to help him out as a career move, and I don't think it necessarily helps Heroic either, but I thought I'd pick your brains about it.
Right, yeah, on the Mertz side going over, to me, it makes a lot of sense that he ended up leaving that team, because I actually think that style of AWPer, the worst thing they can be is playing in a tactical team but not being a very reliable, because if you look at the style of play, it's a bit erratic. The problem is tactical teams, the main thing they want from the AWPer isn't get all the kills. It's just hold this spot the same way every time, get the same kill every time that you would get, and then I'll base everything else off that. That's why, in a mad way, I understood why MSL stuck with KGB on the AWP for so long. He was the definition of that. He just did ABC AWPing all around. Now, yes, he wasn't going to beat Kenny S and Guardian and all that. Yeah, that's true. But for MSL, it's that's 10th on my list of things to do. The first is set up a team, have people run it, people play their roles correctly. I've got a different role over here I've got to deal with, so I've got to get you in line so I can start to, that's the way he's trying to run his team. And then at the end, he's going to deal with, right, KGB can't out-op. Right. So in this scenario, I feel like because Mertz was so erratic and could have very good games and could have games where he just fucked up, if you're MSL, it's I'm having to keep coming back to this again and again. And so unlike other teams in in-game leagues, there's also MSL's mentality is different. If you remember, he's had some teams in the past, famously, where he didn't have a really good AWPer. And either he's made people do the role, or he's sometimes played 5 rifle style, actually. If you remember the Dignitas that had Kjaerbye in as a star player the first time around, they were just running 5 rifles. That was when they'd kicked out Nico, so the other one with the C. So in that world, he's obviously looking like he's going to go back to that now by bringing in this Nico, because as far as I know, none of the players in this team are AWPers. So either you're going to see MSL open again, or he's just going to run 5 rifles. And considering the other North had so many flaws in it as a team, I could see a world in which you're you know what, fuck it, we'll just make the 5 rifle thing work. We'll have to play a different style, but the other approach didn't work. So I could see it working for North. I think that's actually a potential slight, not an upgrade player for player, but I could see it adding a little bit extra firepower, which, if we're being honest, is just taking the heat off Kjaerbye's arse. He's the guy who hasn't pulled his fucking weight, considering he was supposed to come in here and be an absolute stud and do basically what Config did before he got shot out the door, where you just hard carry no matter what, and then you build your name up again. So you're not going to kick Kjaerbye after you've only just signed him and he has just come from Australia. You're going to give him all the time in the world. So I get that. There was no one else left to kick. And the old AZ one, I told him one on that ages ago. I think AZ just does his job, keeps his mouth shut, and even if he doesn't frag out like we want to see, he does his job. So as a result to MSL, it's right, job taken care of. Let's look at the other problems in the team, because he's just a guy who has that sort of methodical, fixing the machine piece by piece type mentality. In terms of Nico going Mertz going to heroic. I'm with you on that one. I don't know what the point of the heroic lineup is. Like, it does just feel like it's a bunch of names where what's funny is nearly all of them could work in a different team, I feel like, but together they make no sense. Like, I don't know what the point is with how they've done this lineup. And also, I don't see any cohesion or like theme to the team even. So as a result, I feel like it's going to be a team destined in this iteration to be like less than the sum of their parts. Now, on the one hand, the mad way I'll try and rationalize that could be good for Mertz is since it's not a team anyone should expect anything from, and it's not a team that's going to be set up to make him succeed. If he now does come out of this, a la Kenny S in the past, players like that, where you get kicked out and you go to the lesser team and you fucking ball out of control, that's how you work your way back into a top team again. So that if you're Mertz, you're in the toughest spot so far, but this is also the challenge where if you can somehow like hard carry this team, you will then get shots at the top level scene again. It might be the thing that turns your career around.
Yeah, and I'm hoping he's going to do it. Like I said, I like the kid. I think he's
actually a fairly cool guy. So,
yeah, that's what I mean.
That's one of those ones where people don't get it. Just because I criticize him as a player has nothing to do with the personality, you know.
No, he's definitely someone that I'm pulling for to sort of fucking come through and do the business. Anyway, we're going to wrap up the show there. We were going to also talk a little bit about Simple's AMA, which proves the point that sometimes being the best at something doesn't mean you're going to give incredibly insightful answers. It did generate some drama, of course.
There were some one-word answers in there. Like people would ask him, "What's your favourite map?" and he'd go, "I've got this cracked Mirage," and then they'd go, "Oh, thanks." And to me, I'm like, I've yet to hear the interesting part. Yeah, like, why is it your favorite?
Yeah, exactly. Nah, I've said this before. Yeah, I've seen some fucking AMAs that if anybody went in there thinking they were going to get to like any great insight about anything in terms of like what would make them a better player or whatever, yeah. No, it wasn't going to happen. But the whole thing with Adram was pretty cool. But we'll get to that probably because I think we'll need to do another show this week now since we had that week off. But we'll work it out. But anyway, all that remains to be said is, of course, to go over and check out rivalry.gg. If you use the code RLS, you can qualify for up to $350 of special discounts and whatnot. So go check that out. It would really help us out over here on the channel. And, of course, the patrons make the show possible. $100 patrons, Botvik, Chris Enwin, Detlef Insomniac, TTMXMP, Hyolu, Ruxun, and Jerky's Minion. And, of course, our $50 patrons, Manuel Stockley, Sard Sawar, Daniel Plamanov-Yordanov, Pete Bidstrup, Ivan Candido, TC Owens, Carv, Roosty, Nostradamus, Marcus Kyunpar, Madsen, Ollie Gunther Zillan, Colin Penny, Mama Jamma Hennessy, Benakagi Assassin, and William Southern. That was By the Numbers. We'll see you shortly, and until then, take care.